Yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine who teaches in Warren Township, who said, yeah, it's a school night. Got to get ready. And I said, wait, what? Well, I work tomorrow. What do you mean you work tomorrow? It's July. You're a teacher. No. Kids report this week. What?
It's a sad reality.
And then I thought, you know what? That makes sense because the summer, I'm not saying summer's coming to an end because I love summer too much, but here it is. The week is upon us in the fact that we turned the page from the NBA Summer League has ended for the Pacers' involvement. The Pacers' website has ended, apparently, and their team store. I'm being sarcastic on that. But, Eddie, it's down for a couple days. Is that right?
Yeah, they issued a statement last week, and they put the statement out again. Starting today, July 22nd, the Pacers team store and website will be temporarily closed as we're preparing for the upcoming season. We appreciate your patience, and we will communicate with our fans when we are back
now
open for
The
business.
team website's not down, just the shop aspect, right?
Yeah,
yes, that was from
Pacers.com
Pacers team
right now.
store.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, in other words, so this is why I'm confused by that. The statement is from Pacers team store. We will be temporarily closing the website and team store. So, meaning the website for the store, not for the Pacers.
That is accurate.
Okay. Are they getting all new merch? Is that what's
Pinstripes
happening
coming
here?
back? Are the pinstripes coming back? That's what I want to know.
They are finding out a way to send off the Doug McDermott jerseys. Is that it?
Maybe
you love
they're
the pinstripes.
Maybe
I
they're
love the
redesigning the
pinstripes.
layout.
How long does that take?
I don't know. I'm not a digital person.
Okay. Nonetheless, Summer League over, and the Colts getting ready to report on Wednesday. Practice gets underway on Thursday. We'll have plenty of conversation about that. As a matter of fact, we are going to be live from Colts camp coming up on the 5th of August. I realize that is still a ways away, but especially, Kevin and Andy are going to be out there a lot for the wake-up call, getting you set from Westfield at Grand Park. And we'll see what happens here with the Colts. I mean, already you're starting to see storylines within the NFL as teams report. Some players are not holding out, but, Jordan Love, for example, in Green Bay, no contract, doesn't want to throw till then. You get these storylines, and you'll see plenty of them that take place over the next couple of weeks. And then, obviously, as I mentioned, the Pacers will be in conversation as well because coming off of a year that probably exceeded expectation going into the Summer League, and in the Summer League, starting to see rotation and minutes from players that you want to see what they can do for Indiana as their responsibilities are elevated. Tyrese Halliburton now in the Olympics. That will give us reason, as if you need any more to watch the Olympics, to watch from a local standpoint.
Germany tonight, I think.
Ach, mein Enkelin.
Right now.
Oh, right now? All right, then.
It's nighttime over there.
I forget
Well, it's like 5 o'clock. Where are they right now, though? Are they already in Paris? They're not,
I
right?
think they're in London. I heard the promo right yesterday. I think that's correct.
Have you been to London? You've been to London,
Yeah, this
obviously,
past
Jimmy.
December,
Eddie, you
yep.
been to London?
No, sir.
Did you find that in London they say that the beer is served warm? I didn't experience that. It was normal where I went.
Yeah, I didn't experience that. Granted, though, Jake, I was there in the winter, so maybe maybe
it was cold
affected
by the time
that.
they gave it to you.
Exactly.
Brickyard 400 over the weekend, and obviously the Xfinity race as well. I thought the Xfinity race was really good. The Brickyard, we will get into that because there is a storyline that makes it interesting from an Indianapolis standpoint, aside the fact that it was in Indianapolis. I thought the 500 tie-in and the storyline of Kyle Larson yesterday was pretty interesting in the Brickyard. And then yesterday in Toronto, the race that I was calling, Colton Herta, not flag to flag, but he was pretty dominant over the course of the race. I'll say spectacular for lack of a better phrase now that we know that everybody went away from it uninjured. But Santino Ferrucci getting airborne, I really thought, to be honest with you, two things really helped out. Three, and that situation for the health of Santino Ferrucci, who walked away from it. The first being the temporary catch fencing that they had installed, which kind of prohibited his car from leaving the racetrack, quite frankly. The second, it goes without saying, the aero screen that protected him because it looked like it took a fair amount of debris across it. And then the third was the car of Christian Rasmussen who had stopped in front. No, I take that back. Not Rasmussen. I think it was Pietro Fittipaldi.
Yes.
Pietro Fittipaldi had kind of come to a stop, and that kind of softened the landing, if you will, of Ferrucci once he got airborne. His car did get upside down, but the AMR safety team was on it immediately. And I've told this before. I will say it again. They know, does the safety team, the driver is instructed to lift their visor if they're awake and alert. So when they looked in at the upside-down car of Ferrucci, they could see the visor was up, and then they give the thumbs up that, yes, in fact, he's awake and alert, and then they kind of know how to process from there. So that was something for sure. My name is Jake Query, by the way. This is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan, Eddie Garrison, Jimmy Cook, the other two voices that you just heard. Jimmy, we'll begin with you in terms of your overall weekend. Anything exciting?
A lot going on in the extended Cookhouse over the weekend. Nephew had a birthday party on Saturday. That was great. And then Friday night, like we talked about, I made the trek to Hinkle Fieldhouse. Not really a trek. It's right in the backyard, right? 20 minutes each way, depending on where in central Indiana you're really located, to go see the basketball tournament, Jake, where you have alumni teams competing for the $1 million cash prize. It's in its 11th year, and if you've watched this tournament at all, and I'll admit I've only really watched it casually. It's not like I'm night in and night out watching it, but I've known of its existence. It's in that niche market of the summertime where there's not a ton going on, so you carve an avenue to garner support, garner interest, gather viewership, and it's become a thing where other alumni of schools have wanted to make a team. And for the first time ever, you have a Indiana-led team, Assembly Ball, and you have, even though they lost last night, All Good Dogs, the Butler team, represented as host Hinkle Fieldhouse. Friday night is my first TBT game I'd ever been to. You got to see Butler play in the first half of the evening session, and then Indiana play in the second half. And shout out to both the Butler fans in attendance for that first game, but especially IU fans, because I told you this off the air. Regardless of the state of IU basketball or how crazy you think the fans can be sometimes, they lived up to that billing on Friday, because I'm not going to say that they packed all the way to the rafters of Hinkle Fieldhouse, but it was very much a sea of red in support of the Yogi Ferrell-led Assembly Ball, who wind up walking away with the win Friday night. Then they defeat the Purdue alumni team last night. Now all of a sudden they're in the title game, or the regional round final, I should say, the regional final coming up here in a couple days. So that was my weekend, and if you get an opportunity to go out to Hinkle to see the last one, this is, if you're a fan of nostalgia, because that's really what this tournament is, outside of the money and the cash prize. If you're a fan of seeing players that you enjoyed watching growing up, for instance, if you followed Butler at all, you got to see Shelvin Mack back out there on the floor, balling out on Friday. That was a surreal, really cool experience. And on the IU side, again, Yogi Ferrell's the one that leads the way, but plenty of other familiar names in there, like Jordy Holes, like Juwan Morgan. Like there's previous players that kind of pull at your heartstrings if you grew up around this past 15-year era of IU basketball.
Now,
So that was
Troy
really cool.
Williams is overcoming an Achilles injury, so he did not play.
Correct.
But he's there, right?
Yep.
Did Miller Kopp, you mentioned, right?
And he was not there on Friday, but he did play yesterday.
Jordan Holes did not play on Friday, correct?
Correct.
Did Noah Vonleh play?
He was not there on Friday, I don't think, but he didn't play either way.
I mean, I realize Yogi Ferrell was the epicenter. What's interesting to me about this tournament and the Indiana roster, Adam Ross, head coach, A.J. Mahar, am I saying that correct? General manager. Jared Callanan, assistant coach. Isaac Green, assistant coach. Kara York, sponsor. Nick York, sponsor. I'm assuming those two are related to one another in some way. Rafael Chilius, assistant coach. Like, they have something like 10 different people. There are as many people not on the team as there are on the team. And I'm thinking, I thought this was like a pickup game tournament. Obviously, it's a pretty orchestrated deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the cost of entry is, but there's entry fees. There's, you need staffing lined up. You're planning logistics of travel if you continue to move on. 64 teams in this edition of the basketball tournament. So a lot of logistical pieces you got to make sure.
Now, pardon my ignorance. You said travel if you move on. So do they play beyond Hinkle?
Yeah. So this is just a region. I can't remember how many regions there are, but there's 64 teams. It's up on that bracket there. There's a region out west, a region to the east.
I see you right here. Yep. So if Indiana wins this region, they're in the Final Four, basically. And that all takes place in Philadelphia, right?
Yep.
Now, the Purdue team, how many Stefanovic was there, right?
Yes.
That they beat. Who else?
I think Eric Hunter Jr. was on there.
Yep.
I did see him. David Jenkins was on that roster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did Agness play? John Agness, did he come down the lane and have like a huge dunk? So everybody, Kelsey Barlow was in it, right?
Yes. Yep.
It's interesting for sure. Some of them, Noah Vonleh is one that I will admit, when it comes to Noah Vonleh, he is one guy that this is why I just am so still like old man. I'm going to get off my lawn. The old man yelling at clouds about recruiting. Noah Vonleh is a wonderful player, don't get me wrong. Seemingly a nice guy, and he had a good year at Indiana. But when he signed with Indiana late and was a top 10 recruit, and it was like, this is huge. Holy cow. Hoosiers. And I'm like, okay. So he's 17 years old. He committed from the East Coast to Indiana. He played for one season. They missed the tournament. He became a top 10 pick, and you basically never heard from him again. Great. Did that change the trajectory of Indiana basketball? That's why I'm just so jaded with that kind of stuff.
It doesn't matter the old phrase of ranking the rankers and how much does a 5-star recruit matter once they get to the collegiate level. You never know how a player's directly going to pan out. And also, as you know, Jake, you've documented as much as anyone when we're talking about college athletics, even in the NIL era, maybe it winds up changing how long a prospect stays because of the money that can be made collegiately. We've certainly seen that over the last season and a half, 2 seasons. But sometimes a player wants to play for a brand school or a coach that can show a pathway to the NBA, and they're not interested in sticking around in the long haul. They're not interested in, being a legacy player for university. They just want to make it to the NBA. And Vonleh did that. He wasn't, an earth-shattering NBA player, but he lasted for, 6, 7 seasons?
Now, Indiana's next game is against Eberlin Drive, right?
Yes.
This is a team made up of a conglomeration of players that play professional basketball outside of the NBA. Let's see how many of them we're familiar with them. You ready? Anthony Clemens from Iowa?
Mm-mm.
For whatever reason, I was thinking he's from Indiana. Can you look that up, Eddie? Anthony Clemens of Iowa? For whatever reason, I was thinking he is from the state of Indiana. I could be totally, totally wrong in that. But that name does sound familiar.
He's from Lansing, Michigan.
Okay. That's not Indiana. I'm looking to see if there are other names here with which we are familiar.
I have vague familiarity with Archie Goodwin, but it's probably just the Kentucky tie.
He was at Kentucky, correct. Jacob Hirschman, who's the general manager and wears his Izod shirts buttoned all the way to the top button, I don't recall. But he looks good in the photo. Nate Roberts from Washington, vague recollection. Couple of players from Washington on that team. Anyway, that's Indiana's next opponent in the tournament.
Look, it's not an overtly serious competition in terms of what your fan persona should be, but the players out there certainly care about it. You got a nice cash incentive set up there. You have teams organically wanting to be a part of this thing. You're seeing it grow over the last 10 to 11 years where other schools want to get in on the action. And for a long time, I remember whether it was Reddit, whether it was in-person fans, IU fans seeing this, thinking, man, it'd be fun to have an alumni team there. And it was. If you're not rooting to the point of exhaustion like you do during a regular college basketball season for Indiana, if you're just rooting for them to go out there, hopefully win, but just seeing nostalgia in front of your eyes, it's a great summertime distraction and unique take on the game that was a lane that wasn't otherwise occupied.
Let me ask you this: in terms of you're wearing your NBA Summer League shirt, right?
I am wearing a Summer League polo
And
today.
this is we only have 3 days left to ask these kinds of questions because the Colts are going to get going on Wednesday, and obviously we know what the epicenter of conversation is going to be on this show.
IU football.
That's right.
Go Hoosiers.
If you were to do one of these tournaments, which would win? A team, if you're talking all time.
Oh, man. Okay.
All time, okay? A team made up of Lakers and anybody who has played for the Lakers or Celtics, or every other player in NBA history. Now, if they played for the Lakers or Celtics at any point, they have to be on the Lakers-Celtic roster. They are exempt from playing on the all-other team roster. In a 7-game series, who wins? It is Eddie, your thoughts?
I would probably go with the non-Lakers Celtics rosters.
I would sweep you in 4 games any day of the week.
I would with those two franchises combined together, I would go Lakers Celtics. Yes.
Who's your roster, Eddie?
Well, you got to give me a minute to formulate that.
Okay. Come up with your roster.
Okay.
See, and here's where you know that you're going to get swept. You need a minute to formulate it, right? I don't need a minute. I'll go, okay, I'm going to go with Wilt Chamberlain as my starting center. I'll take Kareem off the bench. I'll put Shaq at the power forward just to be fun.
Love it.
Magic runs my point. Larry Bird, I'll put it small forward just for fun. You know, I might, just out of boredom, maybe I'll put Paul Pierce at the 2 guard. I don't know.
I'd put Kobe out there before Pierce.
Kobe
but yeah,
Bryant.
You have that luxury. You can
I just
play
wanted to
around.
be anti-you.
LeBron James
I'm being
probably
honest.
cracks my roster. Just out of curiosity. I mean, Anthony Davis, I'll bring in. Maybe I'll put him at point for a game just for fun, just to drop you a bone. You know, we haven't gotten into John Havlicek. I think Bill Russell with his 10 rings, I'd even have him wear all 10 rings during the game to see how it affects his free throw shooting ability. That's fine. It'd be good.
I would probably have Steph,
It's 11, isn't it?
Okay.
Michael Jordan,
Okay.
Scottie Pippen, Kevin Durant,
Okay.
Tim Duncan.
11 rings. He has to wear one on the foot. He's got too many of
Is it
them.
11?
And then
That's
I'd
right.
probably have Dirk and Charles Barkley on my bench.
Okay. Not bad.
Karl Malone.
Karl Malone's on my team. Sorry. Thanks
That's
for
right.
playing. He was a Laker.
That's right.
Who else did you mention? Steph?
Mm-hmm.
You said Nowitzki, right?
Yes.
Charles Barkley?
Yep.
Jordan, obviously, goes without saying.
Yep. Dr.
Tim,
J.
Tim Duncan?
Did Dr. J play for one of them? I
No,
would probably remember him.
Dr. J, you're good. He was a
Okay.
net and a
You're safe.
Sixer. Okay. I still think I sweep you, right?
Giannis.
Okay, not bad.
Jokic.
Not bad. The same can be said in baseball of one of the great questions I ever asked on X, Twitter, whatever it's called now, is if you had to formulate a team all time in baseball for a 7-game series, do you take every player in the history of the game or players that strictly played professionally in the city of New York?
City of New York.
Undoubtedly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot Oscar.
Okay, Oscar's good.
Now, since LeBron played for the Cavaliers and the Heat as well, does he
No, he's
also
off.
fall into the...
Anybody who, if you played for a Laker or Celtic, you were on my roster.
And you cannot be duplicated.
If you played for a Laker or Celtic, you are automatically put into that locker room. Matter of fact, I'll go this far, Eddie.
Okay.
I'll let you select 8 players that I'm not allowed to use out of my locker room, and I'll still sweep you. Right?
Maybe.
I'll let you select 8 players and take them off the board.
I don't know if we're still talking sweep. I mean, that depends which 8 he takes away.
Pick the 8. Whoever you want.
You realize we could. I mean,
Pick your 8,
we
and I
could
will still
replicate
sweep you.
this. We could do it in the only way possible to us, which is we could go into a video game and run the simulation when he takes away the 8 and see what happens.
I'm telling you right now, what 8 would you pick? You would have a harder time selecting the 8 that you want to omit from my roster than you would coming up with your own roster, because you'd go back and forth like, I don't know, man. I mean, at center, are you going to take, fine, you want to take Shaq, Chamberlain, and Kareem all off the board? But you can, and then I'll go with Anthony Davis. That's cool. Or
until he gets hurt.
Robert Parrish or Bill Russell. That's fine. You're like, okay, I'm going to take away Magic. I'm going to take away LeBron, and I'm going to take away Kobe Bryant. Okay, then I'll come back and I'll just get more minutes for Larry Bird, James Worthy.
But you say you can take away 8. If he's taking away 8, you're taking away all the stars and then rolling the dice on the best. I mean, not all the stars, but you're taking away the biggest names.
You're not taking all.
You take away LeBron, take away Larry Bird, take away Bill Russell,
Shaq.
take away Shaq, take away Kobe.
Okay. I still got Magic Johnson. Go ahead.
Take away Magic.
Okay. I still got Elgin Baylor. Have we mentioned Jerry West? Okay, I'll take him. He's only the logo. That's fine.
I think they still win. I'm just saying. The sweep
I'm
is
just saying it's unbelievable. It's unreal. Look, Eddie's got a. By the way, Eddie, I want to let you know.
Okay.
You don't realize this, but I ran into you at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the weekend. I don't know if I sent you guys this or not.
I wasn't there, so this is news to me.
I don't think you'd miss him if you ran into him.
By the way, I misspoke at the top. Team USA plays at 3, not noon today against Germany.
Vindication.
I ran into Eddie at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the weekend. And yes, I was there. I guess I can admit this now because people are going to figure out that I could not. How was I at 2 places at one time?
You cloned yourself, Jake. It's okay.
I did. Well, I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? Call me Dolly the Sheep. On this weekend was a unique one, and I'm going to give a glimpse behind the curtain, and I hope that I'm not in trouble for this, but I think it's pretty obvious because Mark Janes, for example, did both as well, and you could figure it out. The IndyCar Radio Network is also the IMS Radio Network, meaning that we are the radio network of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, in addition to all events for IndyCar. When the schedule was released, and for the first time we realized that IndyCar had a race going at the same time as the Brickyard 400, it meant that the tradition of having the IMS Radio Network calling the Brickyard 400 in partnership with our colleagues at Performance Racing Network, PRN, that's always been a blended crew that we've done for the Brickyard 400. This year that wasn't possible because of the fact that IndyCar was in Toronto. So when we divvied up the assignments, Alex Wolff, Joel Sebastianelli went to Toronto, and myself and Mark Janes stayed here in Indianapolis to broadcast the Toronto race off of backhaul television cameras showing us what was happening in Toronto. Then Nick Yeoman, Michael Young, and Chris Denari, along with Rob Blackman, Rich, and I worked the pits for the NASCAR events, along with Brad Gilley, Doug Rice, and Brett McMillan from PRN. But on Saturday morning, I got a phone call very early in the morning, and because of, now what was it that happened on Friday that shut the world down? Somebody got into a cloud and mixed up some sort of an update, right?
The software update.
Yeah. That created travel havoc for a lot of people. And one of the broadcasters that was supposed to come to Indianapolis to do the Brickyard and to do the Xfinity race on Saturday could not make the trip. So they called me and said, can you do the IndyCar practice and qualifying Toronto broadcast, then go across the street, go up into turn 3 and call qualifying and the Xfinity race for the NASCAR broadcast? And I said, okay. So I double dipped, if you will, and did both of them. So I had to quickly get over to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and was walking out to turn 3 to go up and broadcast the Xfinity race when before me I saw a T-shirt that blew me away because I thought this is the biggest, in so many ways, this is the biggest double meaning of Eddie Garrison and everything about this show's creation of characters of all time. I should have actually had Eddie, I should have bought this shirt off this guy's back right there and brought it into Eddie as a gift. But tell me this is not the great, and read it out loud for me, please. This is the guy's T-shirt that I saw at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
The T-shirt reads in green and pink font, all caps,
And describe the helmet.
and a helmet that is in the shape of the following fruit: Melon Man Racing.
Hell yeah.
And it has an oversized helmet.
It does. It is. Like a pairing. Like there's a. Are you talking about the logo?
So what I'm
Can I at
saying
least
is
see this photo?
Melon Man Racing means not only the watermelon of the racing helmet, which looks like Eddie's Magical Gummies from Washington,
But the helmet is so
but
massive.
also Melon Man.
We found
Melon
out-
Man meaning the melon. The guy has a big melon, right?
We found out on Friday. I just didn't want to reveal this, that somebody got into my stash and ate them all, and it turned out to be Kurt Darling.
That is correct. Kurt Darling and his incredible eating performance.
Man versus food live at IMS.
Somebody sends me this: Jordan, Iverson, Barkley, Jokic, Luka, Dirk, Wade, Pippen, Duncan, Drexler, and Akeem. No way they get swept. I'm telling you, that's an unbelievable lineup. No question about it. Until you hear who they're going against. Until you hear who they're going against, right? Shaq, Russell, Kareem. What do you have? The top 3 scorers of all time in NBA history, right? LeBron, Kareem, and Karl Malone. You got those 3. Larry Bird, Bill Russell, Elgin Baylor, Magic Johnson. It has nothing to do with the talent of that group and more so just the overall depth. Jake, don't forget Vlade Divac and Pau Gasol. Hell yeah, let's go, right? The overall talent of depth in that Lakers Celtics team would be pretty incredible. When we come back, a lot going on Wednesday that parlays into a huge news story on Thursday. We'll talk about that. We'll preview what I'm talking about when we return to this, a Monday edition. Happy Monday to you on apparently a day when a week when kids are returning to school, which freaks me out. It's Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. one of the things that, and we're going to get into Team USA here in just a little bit, especially with Scott Agness when he joins us, because Tyrese Halliburton's minutes, I wouldn't freak out too much about that, but have decreased a little bit. I think one of the things about the Colts camp that makes it surprising or makes it feel like, and maybe it's just me where it feels like it kind of crept up on you, but a big part of that is because you don't have the drama storylines of a year ago. You know, a year ago, the big question mark, aside from the obvious of how good are they going to be, they've got a rookie quarterback. But then on top of that, the rookie quarterback storyline was completely overshadowed by the fact that your star running back at the 11th hour decides he doesn't want to play for this franchise and he wants a trade. And now we're meeting on school buses off of the side of the practice field. No, I realize it was really Jim Irsay's RV. And
the yacht bus.
That's right. And having conversation about it. And there was a lot going on there, correct? And so there was just this ubiquitous drama around the Colts for really up until probably when I was at the German Fest calling wiener dog races with Lindsay Monroe, which is a highlight every year in front of the Rathskeller and Anthonyum. And that's got to be, so that's in October, and that's when we got the notification that Jonathan Taylor had just
Twiggy.
signed the extension. Twiggy, yes. And the Twiggy name then got to go away because we could talk about him again, right? So you don't have that this year. I mean, there are question marks about the Colts this year, but I think they're question marks from an optimistic side. Instead of doom and gloom question marks, most of the question marks now are about bonuses. You know, if Latu's able to give them a really good pass rush presence, that's a bonus because you already have a really good defensive end in DeForest Buckner. You already have a good, solid centerpiece of your defense in Zaire Franklin. You already have, there are question marks about the corners, sure, but I think we saw that Juju Brents is young and big and athletic. They have some safeties that, at the very least, are raw but have athleticism. And then offensively, you feel like this has the chance to be a real powder keg because you have a quarterback that is dynamic, that's big, that's athletic. You have a running back that completely can change things if defenses are on their heels and salt games away. You never know when the big run's coming. You have a receiver that is a big, solid, reliable target that's very good after the catch. You've got another receiver that's a slippery guy that can find open creases. And then you have not one now, but two that you think can get behind defenses in case you want to air it out. And then you have like 7 tight ends that are interchangeable. There are a lot of storylines going into this, Jimmy, but none of them are the kind where it feels like they are make the season storylines that have to hit or break the season storylines if they maintain. And that's actually a good problem to have.
Well, all the storylines are on the field, which wasn't the case a year ago.
Correct.
A year ago, you were worried about a number of different question marks, the most notable of which was Jonathan Taylor and the contract holdout. And then what is this shiny new toy in Anthony Richardson going to be like in the Colts offense? The Jonathan Taylor of it all gets answered last year. That's no longer a distraction. You don't really have anybody of note, maybe even anybody on the roster that's in like a holdout scenario or a, hey, I need my money type of scenario. It's now all focused on fair questions, be it optimistic, be it pessimistic, for on-the-field results, which is a good place to be, regardless of what your stature is as a franchise in the National Football League. You would rather all the goals or question marks be featured with your on-the-field product than off-the-field noise or contract bartering or trade requests or whatever. Now, there are still legitimate questions with this team. The secondary itself, either injury-riddled or lacking true talent outside of a couple of names, is going to be asked to prove itself. You're asking guys that, you know, are a year ago struggled mightily outside of Juju Brents and Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon. You're asking other pieces of this secondary to take a leap forward, which is what Chris Ballard believes is going to happen. And if you're not asking about that, if you're not concerned about the secondary, well, the only reason you wouldn't be concerned about the secondary is because you believe it's going to be another step forward up front with guys like Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye and DeForest Buckner and Liatu Latu being that guy off the bench rotational piece to start as a first-round selection as a rookie and then hopefully by midway through or season's end, he has a large role carved out, and they're able to get consistent pressure on the quarterback. All of the stuff is tangible, on-field questions that will be answered at some point during this season. The only non-on-field question in terms of stats, in terms of winning drives, it's still on the field, but it's not a true win or lose type of question because it has to do with overall health, is Anthony Richardson. And that question continues to, I think, be put to the side by the day. I'll give Eddie credit. He was the voice of, I don't want to say necessarily the voice of the Colts fan, but the voice of everything's going to be okay. When we had that mini blip earlier in the summer where Anthony Richardson gets held out for the last day or so of OTAs, and no, he's fine. It's not a big deal. At the time, I had cautioned that, hey, anytime he's in the news, it's okay to be heightened and be worried about it. But you continue to see him in, highlights of him dunking or playing basketball, of throwing sessions. Like, it appears he's going to go into training camp and going to go in this de facto rookie season as healthy as you could have hoped for, given the procedure that he just underwent 9 months from now. But that is the story. That will be the story all camp. And Jake, we've both seen it, having worked in different levels of media or different levels of news, yourself especially throughout your career, what we are, all of us, all of the media, as a consumption standpoint, knowing how much the quarterback matters in the National Football League, he stubs his toe, it's going to be in the news for 24 hours. Like, that's just the reality of what this is. The question is, how few and far between are those stories versus the actual growth and the actual maturation of him through camp into week one is there between those two subjects?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Because it's going to be made a story even if it's not a story. If he, is hampered a day or they give him a day off, whatever. That's just the reality of where we're at, fair or not.
What could it be a story, though, if he does take a day off, if Ballard, Steichen, or Richardson talk on Wednesday and be like, yeah, there's no scheduled off days for me. I'm going to be out there every day.
You're saying if that happens,
which is what happened in the
correct. They said he was. They gave full clearance across the board. He's good. He's ready to go, and then he wasn't, which is fine. Like I'm on your side with this, Eddie. I think he's fine. I think he's going to be ready to go week one. But yes, when the messaging winds up being, hey, there's no scheduled off days, and one appears, they can say all they want that, oh, this is just, we just decided to give him a day's rest. Well, 2 days ago, you said there were no days off during this stretch. So, yeah, if that happens, it should be news. If they announce it like 3 days ahead of time and say, hey, day off for Anthony Richardson today, it's scheduled, this is okay, then that's part of the plan. You follow along, and there shouldn't be alarm bells going off.
I'm going to use a bad analogy, I realize. But we'll go with the Indy 500 because I think the most people would be familiar with the Indy 500, okay? Or yesterday's Brickyard 400. Throughout the course of the race, the Indy 500, in the course of a race that a car is going to make 7 pit stops on average, okay? And each of them is going to go like, I don't know, they go something like, or they make maybe 6 pit stops. So they can go 28 laps on fuel of green flag racing, whatever it may be. At different intervals of the race, you look at somebody that's a primary car that everybody's paying attention to. Kyle Larson this year. If you look at it and you go, okay, he pitted on lap 28. And then on lap 55, you see his team putting tires over the wall. You go, okay, that makes sense. He's due for another pit stop. He needs fuel, whatever. Fine, no problem. And you look down and he's making a pit stop. You're like, oh, it's fun to watch. And we'll probably call it because it's Kyle Larson. But you're not concerned about it. So he comes in at lap 28, then he comes in at lap 55, then he comes in, it's lap 84, okay, same thing. Then all of a sudden on lap 92, he comes back in. That's cause for concern because this is not a scheduled pit stop. Something has to be going on.
Yeah.
And they can say, no, we just wanted to top him off with fuel. We're just being cautious about the tires. They can tell you that, but everybody inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is saying, but something's off there because why would he come in when he doesn't need to? And the same is true of Anthony Richardson. When Anthony Richardson is supposed to, if he's If he's taking a regularly routine scheduled day off, no problem. But when all of a sudden he had one and then he takes another one accelerated that is out of sequence, it's going to be a storyline.
Yeah.
And maybe part of that is because maybe part of the storylines of scar tissue, and yes, the scar tissue is not in Anthony Richardson's shoulder. It's in the psyche of every Colts fan when they think about shoulder injuries, right? But maybe the storyline, maybe it's a good thing that that's the storyline, because it shows the health of your franchise when the health of a player is the biggest storyline you're talking about. You're not talking about holdouts. You're not talking about guys unhappy. You're not talking about, squabbling amongst teammates. You're not talking about legal processes, none of that. That's not to say that doesn't eventually happen. We didn't think this time a year ago that the contract situation of your running back was going to be the story that dominated the entire camp. And look, Jonathan Taylor's out there again wearing a hoodie and walking around, and oh my gosh, somebody got video of it. Look, he's standing 8 feet away from Chris Ballard, but they didn't even talk to each other. Those were the storylines that we were talking about. Now, the storylines simply are, and by the way, can I just offer a public service announcement? And maybe I'm alone here. People can send me a text and let me know if I'm alone in this. Give me a number off the top of your head, Eddie, 1 through 9.
7.
7. Do I need an every pass breakdown of Anthony Richardson during whatever in practice number 7? Anthony Richardson just threw a beautiful fade pass to Josh Downs that brought the crowd to its feet. Gain of 28. Juju Brents got really burnt on that play. Well, hell, let's bring on the Lombardi and Canton. Like, do we need a daily, every single pass update on what he's doing? Anthony Richardson today was 7 of 8 in non-defensive drills, and do we need that?
The only time I would care about that.
Does Kansas City do that with Patrick Mahomes?
No, you set on highlight plays at this point. No, I don't think they're tracking that. The only thing I would want with Anthony Richardson in that regard, whoever's doing that, whoever's lane that is, I don't need to see that unless over a 4-day stretch he's 4 of 50.
People,
and it's
and
like,
overthrowing
okay,
people.
whoa.
The thing about Richardson going into last year, and again, I'm going off of what basically other people tell me, okay? Because I don't pretend to be some sort of like definitive technique guru, but his release point was of concern and where he was getting rid of the football in his throwing motion. And the release point was such that he was holding on to it just a little bit too high in his release point, if I'm not mistaken, and that's why he was overthrowing people coming out of college. It seemed to me once he got out in games that his accuracy was pretty good. His accuracy at Florida was the big question mark. I mean, the biggest – the guy's built like Adonis, runs like the wind, and looked to have pretty good instincts. I think a big challenge with quarterbacks coming out of college, as we've talked about before, one of them is the instinct of the throwing window, of knowing when to get rid of the ball and how much time you have to get the ball there. And so many guys coming out of college are used to, they see a receiver doing a break and they're like, okay, I've got a second and a half to get it there. Well, in the NFL, you really have a half second. And learning to adjust to that time throws off a lot of guys, pardon the pun. With Richardson, I think one thing last year where he looked ahead of the curve, albeit in limited number of times that we saw him, but it appeared that with Richardson, his timing of when to go and when to bail and that instinct of the pocket presence of knowing when it's time to tuck and run or when it's time to get rid of your primary and go to your checkdowns, he looked pretty good at that. He looked like a guy that's been around for a while. That in that aspect, you feel pretty good about it. And I thought his mechanics were pretty good. I didn't see last year, and I'm not one of these that's like, yeah, I got up yesterday and spent 4 hours looking at film, but I didn't see the dilemma of the oversailing pass with the regularity of which we were told to be concerned of it coming into his rookie year. It's undoubtedly a storyline to watch, whether or not, because, Jimmy, the reality is this. The sample size was still small, right?
Yeah, he passes 84 times. Now, that said, he had the best, and it's tough, right? I say this, and it sounds like I'm using stats to prop him up. I don't mean to do that. It's just the reality of his career. You'd factor in the injury situation last year and his college career. He has started in 17 games since 2020. Been a part of 17 games in, over the course of 4 seasons of football. And last year, he has his highest passing percentage of any of those seasons, but it's in 4 games with 84 attempts. I've said this about a couple of Pacers players, and I say the same about Anthony Richardson. I've told you where I stand on this. I think he will play in the over, if we're setting the over-under of 13.5 or 14.5, whatever that number was. I think he plays a satisfactory amount of games for the Colts this year. I think he winds up playing a near full season, and the injury bug thing gets thrown to the side. But the idea that you could say, based on that limited sample size, whether or not 2024 is going to be good or bad for him is a dishonest conversation to be a part of. Because for just as many windows of, holy cow, did you see that throw? There were mistimings. There were incompletions. Not as a high level as it was in college, but also he wasn't being asked to throw it an insane amount of times last year. And he did a lot with his legs. But the idea that it's the same thing with Jarris Walker right now for the Pacers. You can't possibly go into year 2 with him and say definitively one way or another he is going to be positive or negative in a large role for the Pacers next year. The sample size just isn't great enough. That said, I understand we're in a talk medium where that's our gig, but one of the hottest takes you could say about Anthony Richardson right now is I think he's going to be healthy next year. But the idea of being able to say definitively one way or the other he's going to be really good this year or really bad, I think is missing the point. I said this on Friday, Jake. The outlook you should have for Anthony Richardson is, with it being a de facto rookie season, he's going to have, if he had a roller coaster year this year, meaning one game he throws for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the next game he throws for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. As long as that roller coaster is trending upward by the end of the season, that is a successful de facto rookie campaign.
And if the roller coaster is coming in practice 5 on a Thursday at 4 in the afternoon, we don't necessarily need to hit the panic button on August 10th. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Scott Agness is going to join us top of the hour. Something interesting going on with Team USA that affects Indiana. We'll get into that coming up in just about 12 minutes. It's Query & Company here on The Fan. Jimmy Cook, I'm going to put you on the spot with a musical trivia question. You ready?
This always goes well.
Hotel California by the Eagles. You're familiar with the song, correct?
I am, yes.
What is it that happens with the Hotel California that even if you check out, you can never do?
You can never leave.
Correct. I have come to the conclusion that...
I got one right. I'm so happy.
That is exciting. I've come to the conclusion, that Hotel California was not written about like a love triangle or whatever it may be that some people say it's about, satanic worshiping. There's all kinds of theories, right?
Is this something you were thinking about into the wee hours of the morning?
Yes.
Over the weekend?
Yes.
Okay.
I get a lot of Shining vibes from Hotel California.
I could see that. I have decided that now I know, and I've found the meaning of Hotel California.
Wow.
There are those that talk about, you grab it with the Steely knives. That's because there was a love triangle between one of the Eagles and a member of Steely Dan. Some people say that it's about, as I mentioned, like an occult or the leadership thereof or the worshiping thereof.
Can I ask one more follow-up? Did
Yes,
you do
sir.
more than just take a picture of Melon Man?
I did not take any of his melons,
Okay,
no.
all right.
I have come to the conclusion that Hotel California, you can check out anytime you'd like, but you can never leave. That song was actually a prognostication, if you will, a 40-year in advance vision by, I don't know whether it would be Don Henley or Glenn Fry or one of the members of the Eagles. What they were talking about was what happens when you actually go onto a Major League Baseball team's website and buy something where you have to enter your email address and then spend time trying to get off of that team's email subscription list. You can check out all you want with the unsubscribe button, but believe you me, you can never leave.
You know what? I've never once have purchased anything from the LA Angels, and I get spam emails from them constantly.
It's unbelievable. And you can sit there and click unsubscribe,
Yep.
and then it's like, sorry, that page doesn't work. What? Or you can click unsubscribe. Now, please log into unsubscribe and
Yep.
check the things you want to unsubscribe from. I want to unsubscribe from all of them. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. Okay, we'll revisit in 90 days. What? But meanwhile, let's show you the rain poncho you can get for the Angels on poncho night in 3 weeks.
What
It never
to-
rains in L.A.
What to know for game day?
Yes. I mean, it is because with IndyCar travels, I've gone to games and bought tickets, and I know obviously I can buy from other, but virtually every time, if you buy anything from the team itself,
yeah.
you have to enter your email, and I mean, literally, it is unreal.
Doesn't matter if you're not even going to see, like, for that team. Like, I went to Inter Miami played FC Cincinnati in MLS last year. I didn't even buy the tickets through Cincinnati because I was there at their stadium. I've been getting emails the last year about FC Cincinnati.
If your phone Wi-Fi was on and it clicked on it and it registered, forget about it. Katie barred the door, right?
When I went to TBT on Friday, I bought the tickets through Ticketmaster. I didn't give out my phone number, and then somehow I get a text after the games that, hey,
crazy.
Butler and Indiana are
It's
playing
crazy.
on Sunday night. Get your tickets now.
Not only that, but and obviously it's all linked together.
Sure, yeah.
But you Google search new galoshes, and then an hour later, or you text somebody, hey, I need a new umbrella, and an hour later, the first time that you log into a social media page and an ad pops up, a pop-up ad for umbrellas, and you're like, really?
Yep.
By the way, speaking of add-ons like that, some breaking news within the household, I guess. The word household? Not yet. I'm sorry. Thank you. That we'll get to coming up in about 20 minutes is what I meant to say. But it happened over the weekend. A change within the household.
Boo is a brother.
Huh?
Boo is a brother.
That might be correct. But Scott Agness joins us next. Telling you. This was written about MLB email subscriptions.
The foresight there is tremendous.
You can unsubscribe anytime you'd like. But outside of that, forget about it. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line, he was in attendance for the WNBA All-Star Game, which had kind of a viral moment with Caitlin Clark getting an assist to Angel Reese, and then the two of them exchanging 5 running back down the floor. And then, of course, we could talk about Tyrese Halliburton as well in Team USA. Scott Agness joining us on the show from Fieldhouse Files. Scott, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about you guys?
No complaints. I'll let you choose. Would you like to begin with Team USA or the WNBA conversation?
Let's go WNBA, where I spent the last 5 days.
Okay. Overall, I guess, thoughts about it, and did we see a cooling, if you will, of the rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel, and Reese? Because I think I think the thought process from a lot of people was these are two people that just absolutely hate each other. And it's kind of like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson when we later find out, no, they actually kind of had a great appreciation and respect for one another. Did that game go maybe a longer way than we thought?
I think it's not a rivalry between the two players, Jake. I think it's a rivalry between their fan bases.
That's very fair.
I don't think it's either player speaking out, I can't stand her, or I don't like playing her, or I don't respect the way in which she does this or that. I don't see any of that. Now, with that said, also, I don't think they're friends. They're not grabbing drinks after the game. I don't think they're hanging out in the similar circles or anything. On the court, they were slapping high fives. They were celebrating the win as a team. They worked in unison. They inbounded the ball to each other, things like that. I think it's a professional relationship. I think they both handled it well. And I think perhaps fan bases, hopefully on both sides, cooled down a little bit and said, hey, look, these are two of the stars of the league, and let's enjoy it for what it is.
Scott, one of the bigger talking points on our end locally for this all-star game of Team WNBA versus Team USA was, would we get any petty moments? Would we get any, angry frustration, I'm here type of moments from Caitlin Clark in regards to the snub from Team USA? I mean, I would argue as well as she played, as efficient as she was, it got the job done of, hey, I'm here, I belong on this floor. With, if there was ever a question, I don't think there was to the WNBA fan. I don't think there really was nationally that Caitlin Clark, if there was a question of her being an all-star or not, I think it left through the first 5 games of the Fever season. But did it undersell? Did it deliver adequately what you would have hoped for her getting a chance to, if at all, the human element of it prove to Team USA, hey, you made a mistake not having me on that roster?
Yeah, I think a couple things. First of all, the biggest telltale point was not her production. It was the fact that Kelsey Plum and the opposing team, the Olympians, were treating her like a regular season game, picking her up full court, pressuring her. I think that is the greatest compliment you can give Caitlin, is you are so tough to guard, you are so impactful to the offense that we're going to guard you full length in an all-star game, which is normally a glorified pickup game. Now, it wasn't exactly in this instance, but I thought that was the best case. Now, in terms of her performance, I think the only thing she didn't provide that she would have liked to was, for the fans, was knocking down one of those logo threes. It was something we were all looking forward to. I thought it was a bit ironic that her first basket was a layup, a gimme, and not really what we call her layup, being a logo three. Now, in terms of how maybe she thought or perceived, I think she had moved past that. I think mentally she was moved past the thought of, I'm not an Olympian, I'm not on this team, they don't want me part of it. And really, she was just trying to get through this weekend because on the other side was her first breaks in September. And so she was really trying to soak in the weekend. She had several appearances, several of which I was able to attend and write about as well, which was nice. But more than anything, I think her just getting to the game, getting through it, nobody having injuries was huge. But I still go back, Jimmy, to what I said a couple months ago. I still believe both Caitlin and Aguguwale, who went off, those two are Olympians in my mind. And I thought what they both did, both Caitlin even contributing, would have had the assist record if she played more minutes. And then Aguguwale, what she was able to do, and being the most dominant one-on-one player in the league right now, I thought that in itself spoke up even more.
Do you think the Olympic break and the time off, and I'm going to do this in 2 parts. Part one is Caitlin Clark individually, Scott. Is it better for her physically or mentally, the break?
I think mentally. And I say that because after the game, and I guess a couple days leading up to it, she had talked about, I can't wait to not touch a ball again. And what that tells me is burnout. I'm exhausted. I'm mentally drained. I'm fatigued here. Because the greats, I think of Peyton and Steph, like you don't often hear them talking about, I need to get away from it. If anything, that's where you would go on vacation. You'd go on vacation, but you couldn't wait to get to the gym. And so based on her just looking forward to doing anything but basketball tells me mentally she needed this restful moment.
Then secondly, does it have impact or does it come at the wrong time in terms of the gelling together of just the Fever roster in general?
I don't think so, because I think, and this is probably an understatement, I think this break will be massive for this team. First of all, just because your best player in Caitlin is going to be able to be a better shell of herself. I think she's probably been at like 80%, right, mentally and physically of where she could be just because of all this. So I think you're going to get her at her tip-top shape with a month off. And then better yet, now they have the next 10 days off. But then they'll all come back to Indy, and a team like Vegas has several key players. Basically, their starting lineup is on the Olympic team. So not only do they not get rest, but they're not with the entire team. The Fever, meanwhile, they'll come back to Indy and hold kind of unofficial practices, some games within a practice, let's call it, horse, and maybe playing 21, and just those lighthearted moments that I think can further bring a team together. So I think this is a massive time, Jake, for both Caitlin individually and for this team's chemistry. I think this will truly be their training camp, whereas they were really rushed through things, and nobody knew what to expect with the Caitlin Clark experience all the way back in May.
Scott, how would you assess or grade the overall temperature of the WNBA, the heightened nature of its accelerated popularity growth, especially with the arrival of Caitlin Clark, the festivities that you experienced throughout All-Star Weekend, combined with the looming idea of extended or enhancement with a media rights deal?
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest conversations that took part throughout the weekend, was what this deal looks like and what it can do for the league moving forward. Now, I think the league, as someone who covers Caitlin basically on a daily basis now, I think many, at least publicly, a lot of the players and executives are underestimating the level of impact that Caitlin has had. I even asked her in a press conference, Kathleen Engelberg, directly, what have you thought about Caitlin, her contributions? And because she was referencing all these numbers, the number of sellouts, how they've had 16 games with over 1 million people as an audience. Well, 14 of those are Caitlin. And I didn't like the fact that Kathy, came back. Well, all our rookies have been really good and helped raise the tide. It's like, no. Caitlin has been the single driving force, and everything else has been a nice addition. I think that's one thing. But secondly, the game has never been higher across the league. It's in a really healthy place in terms of expansion. You got 2 teams already set to join the league, one next year, and then they're hoping to have 2 more by 2028. They want to add another 4 games next year for each team. So it's in a really good spot. What I would also be interested in seeing, and this was a key discussion point I think a lot of us in the media were talking about in Phoenix, was should the W be able to negotiate on its own and not have its deal for the ride with the NBA and basically NBA deciding how much money they get out of that. I think in years past that was needed, right? But now perhaps it can stand on its own, and what would that media deal look like would be interesting.
Scott, do you have concern over or explanation over Tyrese Halliburton's, I'll say diminished for lack of a better word, minutes with Team USA?
I would say I have concern only because if you're going to have him, you need to utilize him in the ways in which he's best. And I don't think we've seen that in the last couple of exhibition games. Now, I will say, too, the biggest factor in all this has been the addition of Derek White. That's going to diminish and take away a lot of his minutes, because I think we'll see as this gets started here in earnest in about a week with the true Olympics and not just the exhibition slate, is I think a lot of times we'll see Steve Kerr go to a defensive lineup and that's going to even lean on Derek White even more, whereas obviously Tyrese is there for the offense and really to race it up the floor. But in my mind, Jake, if Tyrese is out there, he needs the ball in his hands, and he needs to kind of help facilitate and run things. If he's just playing off ball, there's a lot of players who could do that.
Scott, from the standpoint of his role compared to the addition of Derek White that winds up happening before, the showcase starts, before we really get into the meat and potatoes of the prelim to Olympic basketball taking place here in, just a week's time or so, is there any real impact if Derek White continues to have a increased role? Yesterday, they both kind of had diminished roles, if you will. It felt like, or not yesterday, but over the weekend on Saturday, it felt like against South Sudan, because so much was going on and you were looking at, one of the potential biggest upsets in, international basketball history. You look at that box score and it looks like a mess. It looks like they were just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what would stick. Can you take anything from that in terms of the Derek White, Tyrese Halliburton conversation of it all when a box score against South Sudan appeared to be so hectic?
Yeah, I don't think so in that last game, because probably right in the second half, what you're trying to do is stay afloat and then win the game. And so you're probably you are thinking less about, all right, well, let's get him 4 minutes here and 12 minutes here. That's really what you're trying to do in the exhibition game. You're trying to figure out lineups, what chemistry works best. In my mind, Anthony Davis should be starting, but I think quietly Joel Embiid got a guarantee if you join this roster, you're going to be in the starting lineup, because he's the one guy that just doesn't fit with that group. And if anything, Tyrese really would, if you really want to race and have an offensive-minded start to games. He's clearly not a top 5 player on that roster, top 10. But if it's how much of a playing style do you want to emphasize? I would start Anthony Davis over Embiid, but it doesn't look like that way is happening. But, Jimmy, to your point there, I think Derek White probably will end up with more minutes regularly than Tyrese, but I do believe there will be a game or two during this Olympics when the offense is stagnant, when nobody really has it going, and they really need a facilitator to just get somebody's confidence going, whether it's throwing a couple baskets or assists in a row to AD, or feeding Drew Holiday in the corner or something. I think there will be a need, but we knew all along that Tyrese was one of the later picks in all this. And he has a very specific role, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning. It just doesn't make sense if the ball's not in his hands for him to be out there, because that's where he's at his best.
I realize we're advocating for this because it's the player in our market, and it's a player that we really care about seeing. But the reason I bring up if Derek White impacts that at all, Tyrese in the Australia game where he winds up knocking down 2 late threes that were important for them being able to walk out of there with a W and get more separation against the Aussies. He winds up playing 18 minutes. That was Derek White's, and again, his, I think, second game on the roster at that point in time. He doesn't play at all. If we throw out the Serbia game, where, again, it's frenetic, trying to get a W, trying to avoid, again, one of the most epic upsets of international basketball history, and you just go back instead to the matchup against Serbia, 14 minutes. I know we're just fighting about minutes here, but if he's in double figures, Tyrese Halliburton, from a minute standpoint, 13, 14 minutes a game, I think if you told me that at the start of training camp for Team USA, I'd take that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I totally agree. That's about what I would hope is best case scenario for him. I realized going in, I thought maybe if he could get a couple 4-minute stints, in the second quarter and third quarter, maybe that was probably realistic. So I agree. Yeah, if you could get 12 to 13 from him per game, I think on average, that's better than we all anticipated a couple months ago.
Scott Agness is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. You can read his work at Fieldhouse Files. He's obviously on this show with regularity as well. Scott, just in terms of the Summer League in general, kind of 2 ways to look at the Pacers summer. Halliburton with Team USA, then the other would be Summer League. I know that we talked to you, I believe, just before their penultimate game in the Summer League, but walking away from it now that the Summer League is complete, Pacers go 1-4, is there anybody that either positively or negatively changed their standing in terms of where you thought they slotted going into it?
Yeah, I would say on the positive side, Johnny Furphy. I thought he showed a little bit more than I was expecting at this juncture, right, where Pacers didn't even work him out. They knew about his game and knew what he had done at Kansas. But didn't get their hands on him, weren't able to work him out or anything like that. And I thought he showed the possibilities. Now, I want to stress, I'm not saying he's an impact player even in the rotation next year. I'm saying 2 years down the line, and that's just fine considering their lineups and rotations right now as they run it back for hopefully a healthy season next year. So I thought he helped. On the other side of that, I wanted to see more out of Kendall Brown. He's a couple of years in, still very young, just 21. He, too, left after 1 year of college at Baylor. Very raw, but has that prototype. He's the type of he's the archetype that the Pacers really need with speed, athleticism, some height and size there out on the wing. But he still left a lot for me to be desired, I think, there. Now, he has a standard contract, but it's non-guaranteed. So he could be waived at any time without any loss of money by any means. And the Pacers still have some roster decisions to officially make. They still have one standard contract available, which seems like it's headed to James Johnson again. He was out in Vegas. I saw him there at the Pacers' first Summer League game. And probably the biggest overwhelming takeaway, Jake, in all this was what we saw leading up to Summer League. And that was basically that the entire team was out in Vegas for a week, was able to work out for the most part together. Tyrese had his USAB. Andrew Nembhard had his Canada, but they were all able to get together for a dinner before Tyrese and Team USA headed out. And so that's the number one thing I think that happened was that quiet work that they were able to get done before Summer League. And that was something that happened last year as well. And before that, though, was not a normal thing. And that's a big reason why I think they are so close. And really where I think last season started was the work they did there, followed by what they had with their players-only camp in Nashville right before the season.
Scott Agness is our guest, covers the Pacers for Fieldhouse Files. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Scott, I was satisfied, I think is the proper phrasing there, with what I saw from Jarris Walker throughout Summer League. He looked a year better, as you would expect. If you compare Summer Leagues for him, he looked like a player that at times excelled beyond this line I'm about to draw. At other times, I would say borderline didn't belong there, didn't need to be out there. You've seen enough of his body of work to know who he is. Did you share similar sentiment on Jarris Walker with your expectations going into Summer League now that it's behind us for the Pacers, and where, if anything, is a fair assessment of what to expect from him in 24-25?
I was glad we saw Jarris for at least a couple games, and it turned out to be several more than that. Ben Shepherd was the guy that is never going to pop at something like this, but you just know exactly who he is, much like Andrew Nembhard last year, where you could tell a few games in, all right, he's good. I think we've seen all we need to see. In terms of Jarris, it was a little bit different only because they were experimenting more than anything. And I think that probably led to some of the negativity or just not seeing as much as you would like from him. You played the first several games at the 3 spot. Then the next couple games, you saw him at the 2 spot, which led to him with the ball in his hands a lot more and guarding quicker and smaller players. So I think that was something they wanted to try to be able to find some minutes for him. They realized at that 4 position, he's probably just not going to have minutes next year bearing an injury. And so if they could get him minutes at the 3, maybe at the 2, I don't see that, mainly because you look at the box score, and probably the biggest issue for this summer Pacers thing was turnovers, and Jarris Walker was one of the biggest culprits behind that. But it was also because the ball was in his hands so much. So you do understand that a little bit more. I thought he was good, all things considered. He did have those moments where he popped, but you would have liked him to take better care of the basketball, even though he made that change in where he was playing.
Scott, I'm a firm believer that T.J. McConnell's career is going to end as an Indiana Pacer, and even beyond playing. I think that he will be a part of the franchise for longer than even his playing days. Are the Pacers, though, going to have to try to balance in terms of massaging out, like how many years they give left to McConnell, how they transition, because obviously they've got good players in the backcourt, but he obviously this season showed a value that you can't keep off the floor. How do they massage all of that moving forward, if that makes sense?
It does, yeah. He's now in his 30s. The end's closer than the beginning, and he's grateful, that he even made it past the first contract. He went undrafted, and then after that first contract, he didn't know where he was headed because Philly, which now in hindsight obviously just looks foolish, didn't even inquire or consider bringing him back. And so if fans remember, he came to Indy with like a partial guarantee. And coming in, I think it was Nate McMillan saying, yeah, there's no guarantees. He's the third point guard here behind Aaron Holiday, and that didn't last very long. But I think you can get another 2 years of TJ at what he is. Beyond that, it just depends considering how much of his is related to that speed and quickness and catching opponents off guard. I'm still stunned that, almost, 10 years into the league, and he still gets people with that inbounds pass. But I think, especially because he's headed towards the coaching path, that's in his family, it's in his blood. That's what he's been talking about wanting to do for really since he got here. So I think with that perspective and context, he has a greater understanding of what Rick Carlisle will have to be thinking and considerations he had. But at least for another year, I see no reason why he would slow down. And if anything, it gives the Pacers another weapon here. I think the biggest consideration becomes, how do you find minutes for Mathurin? Where do you find him, in starting or off the bench, considering the jump Andrew has and is continuing to make? I think that really complicates things if you're the coaching staff. And I would agree with you, Jake. I think McConnell loves it here. He is loved here. And I think the Pacers would be very pleased if he's able to finish his playing days here.
Scott, admittedly, this is a weird question because they're all grown men. They're athletes. They've performed at a high level throughout the entirety of their careers, and they're all professionals. But going back to Team USA for a second, for Tyrese Halliburton, regardless of what the minutes wind up being on a nightly basis, regardless of how much of an impact he has on these games, what would you hope the biggest takeaway or maybe growth moment he has being paired up with over this extended weeks-long adventure with Team USA? What would you hope he takes away or learns from this?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think, first of all, it would be how much defense matters, maybe re-emphasizing that. I mean, countless times through this past year, Rick Carlisle and the coaching staff would say, hey, it needs everybody. We need everybody on defense. And being the leader of this team, I would like to see more from him on that under the floor. We can all understand he's not going to be an elite defender, but you'd like to see more there. And then secondly, just kind of the winning aspect, and just from a team standpoint, and soaking in some of that from his teammates, and what it means, and how you go about putting together a winning team and the right parts and those things. He's very curious. He's very good at reading other people and learning from that. So I think, picking the minds of Drew Holiday, picking the brain of LeBron and Steph, I think he can really gather a lot there. I think he'll learn more off the court than he will on the court.
Scott, finally, I mentioned this earlier to Eddie and Jimmy. I want your opinion on this. Okay, You ready? We're going to play a game of all players are in their prime. So you get prime. Every player that you're talking about is in their prime, okay?
Okay.
Roster number 1 is any player that has played for the Los Angeles Lakers or Boston Celtics is eligible to you. And if they at any point played for one of those two franchises, they have to be on your franchise, the Lakers Celtics team. Option 2 is every other player in NBA history. Which one wins a 7-game series, and why does the first one clearly sweep?
Yeah, I was going to say that's an easy choice. You take those two dominant teams, especially when you take the previous history. But you just have elite skill, elite size, whether you talk present day with the dominance. Think of LeBron and Shaq teaming up if you take currently, or you could go all the way back. I mean, Jerry West has been on our minds over the last month. I guess even I, unable to see him live, obviously, couldn't truly appreciate the type of player and dominance that he was. And so, yeah, to me, it's no doubt I would take players between those two teams over the field.
Now, I did look up. I don't even know what site I was looking at that listed the 30 greatest players in basketball history. And numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12 all would be on that team. 15, 18, 19, and 22. And that's before you get into, that didn't even count Elgin Baylor and James Worthy and
Sure.
Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. And, I mean, it's just never ending, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason they have whatever they have, 35, 38 championships combined.
I mean, there's really good players on the other team. Elijah Wan's criminally underrated. I mean, there's a lot, but nonetheless. All right, Scott, appreciate the conversation, and we will talk to you soon, all right?
All right, absolutely.
Thanks for
guys.
agreeing with me on that. Scott Agness on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Crazy weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Track dude Michael Young, who not only works the PA, and every time that I talk to him, he is in his basement listening to records on vinyl. Michael Young, track dude Michael Young has – Bob Jenkins had the largest vinyl record collection in the state of Indiana probably, and I think track dude is second. But they're albums and not 45s. And every time I talk to him, he's like, yeah, I'm sitting in my basement right now listening to, and you name the artist, and he's listening to it on vinyl. I don't know how many, record player needles he goes through in a year. But at any rate, he was on the call for both races that took place yesterday. But something that happened at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that I think does present a glimpse into the future of IMS. And I'll explain what I'm talking about there. And also I need to tell you guys, going into that, I had teased this and told you I'd tell you at the bottom. Saturday, I'm working the race for the Xfinity race, and I get a text. Shannon apparently decided on Saturday to go to a dog adoption event. Okay? A rescue event.
Yeah.
For dogs up for adoption that have been rescued from different situations and whatever else. So, as a result, yes, in fact, Boo. Now, is this Boo lives in a different residence because Shannon and I live separately. So, is this Boo's brother, stepbrother, cousin? What is it?
Stepbrother.
Yeah.
Is it stepbrother?
Yes.
Yes.
Can't be
know.
cousins because you two are together.
But that would make them brothers then, right? Just different residence brothers, right?
I mean, stepbrothers are still brothers.
So we have
You
Joe.
just have more room for activities.
We
since
have
you have
Joe
two
and
residences.
Kobe that are rescues, okay, that live with Shannon. We have Boo the cat that lives with me. And now here's the latest edition. 4 months old.
Oh, it's a good boy. Or
That's a
girl.
cute
Is it a
little
boy or
fella.
girl? I'm sorry. I didn't
It
hear
is
that.
a boy.
Is it a boy? Okay.
It is a French bulldog. It is a French bulldog that, because he is not pure in color, I think, like some breeder just kind of tossed him. I hate to say it that way. And so he was rescued by a rescue group that happen to have him. And he's a French bulldog, and she was like, there we go. Now,
Did you name him Tart?
I have always wanted – that's not bad. I my entire life I've wanted to get a French bulldog and name him either Jules or Goo, for Jules Goo, my favorite Indy 500 winner of all time. And then I had all kinds of ideas of things related to the name Jules Goo, but I lost out because her dad wanted to name it after one of his friends or somebody and so the dog's name is Charlie, which to me, I simply call him Little Man. I'm just like, come here, little man, come here, little man. So Charlie's very confused of learning his name. But Michael Young, by the way, is next. Most that listened to Journey back in the day had fabulous mullets. Most got rid of them about 18 years ago. Our next guest held on to his as long as he possibly could, party in the front and party in the back when it came to his hair. Michael Young, the track dude, joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. He was in turn number 2 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the weekend for both the Xfinity race and the Brickyard 400, and is probably in his basement listening to Journey on vinyl as we speak. Michael, how are you?
That was good, Jake. That was actually earlier today. The Kentucky Waterfall, always a hairstyle that will live on in infamy.
Okay. How many albums do you own on vinyl?
2,000-ish.
How many 45s did Bob Jenkins own?
12,000, maybe.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was an insane amount of 45s. Yes.
And how long? And were they nice to you? Were the producers from Hoarders when they came out to do the show with the both of you?
Well, actually, they've got 4 episodes from the both of us. The 2.5 out of Bob, and then the other 1.5 out of me. Yeah, it's an insane amount of vinyl, but like anything that anybody's passionate about, you can never have enough. Although I've gotten to the point in my life where I don't buy as much as I used to, because even at my age, I realize, I might have a problem. So I've stopped buying.
You know, I've never seen an episode of the show Hoarders, but I have every one of them saved on my DVR. Anyway.
Well played,
thank
sir.
You. So, Michael, let's get to this. I wanted you to expand on this because we talked, and you made a very good point. Kyle Larson, in terms of winning the Brickyard 400, somebody that's not a fan of stock car and is a fan of IndyCar, or maybe somebody that's more a fan of stock car and its more traditional tracks. The car he was running yesterday did have significance to the Indy 500 and to what could have been for him and what might still be in the future. Can you explain?
Well, it was more of a full circle thing than anything else. At the Indianapolis 500, obviously he ran with Hendrick, Arrow McLaren, and they did the entire month of May. They were running in the Indy car, and then he was to then fly to Charlotte to run the Coca-Cola 600 that night in a special paint scheme. Well, obviously, the Indianapolis 500 had that huge rain delay. We didn't get started till late in the day, which caused him to miss the Coca-Cola 600. That said, he didn't get to run that car, but ran it here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway yesterday. That paint scheme he was supposed to run in Charlotte ran yesterday, and as I said, how fitting, full circle it was that he was able to pull off the victory yesterday. And if you're a fan of open-wheel racing or a fan of NASCAR, you can't look at a guy like Kyle Larson and not say that kid's something special. He's just an amazing driver. You think about it, if he doesn't have that speeding penalty, he could have easily finished in the top 5 of the Indy 500.
And to take it not full circle, but full oval, I mean, back on the oval yesterday for the Brickyard, so it kind of was fitting that the guy that I just think most links or unifies race fans in general, and from the, I mean, whether it's USAC fans, IndyCar fans, Brickyard, Kyle Larson clearly is the guy that was probably the biggest name in this year's installment of the Brickyard 400. But your thoughts on it being back on the oval, and in addition to that, just in the crowd versus, say, the last time that we saw it on the oval.
It felt special yesterday. Not that anytime you go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it doesn't feel special, but yesterday felt like it was something special. I did public address in the morning, and I got to the track around 9 o'clock, and there were already people in line waiting to get in. That there was a buzz around the speedway that we hadn't seen in quite some time, even with the last iterations and obviously COVID in 2020 with the last time we ran the oval. But it just felt like it was something special. And as the day progressed and as the crowd started to fill in, it felt different. Even the drivers said throughout the entire pre-race driver introductions, they said it feels like an event, to the point where on the restart where Brad Keselowski had to pull off and Kyle Larson got to pull up in that position and then was on point, and Ryan Blaney was in the control car. Blaney was just livid that Larson was able to get down into that position and still is upset about it to this day, a day after, because it meant something to these guys. Every one of those guys wanted to win that race, and you don't normally see that type of passion, that anger, that angst, that desire doesn't normally happen when we're on the road course, but it does on the oval, and you could feel that yesterday again.
You mentioned it already, what the last couple of months have been for Kyle Larson and him not being able to, achieve his dreams of the double with the rain delays. And that, you never know what May is going to throw at you. The quote that kept floating around is one of those timeless quotes of the highest of highs and lowest of lows. I believe there was a piece that Jeff Gordon had reinserted that quote in regards to what you have to do to mentally survive in May. The post-race commentary there from the Brickyard 400, it appears that this is something Larson really wants to try again. I know Rick Hendrick, at least the quote that was assigned to him of Hendrick Motorsports was, it's not yet been decided or finalized for a sign-off for him to be a part of the 500 next year. How uncommon is that in terms of a timeline for when approval might happen? If you were to put a likelihood on it, how likely is it that we'll end up seeing Kyle Larson behind the wheel of an Indy car in the Indianapolis 500 in May?
Today, speaking of today, I'd say 99.5% positive that would happen. I think Rick Hendrick is just looking at the long game and what will happen on the Cup side, which is obviously the most important part for Hendrick Motorsports and what Kyle Larson does. But he knows Kyle wants to come back and do it again. I think Rick Hendrick wants to come back and do it again. But you got to remember the beginning part of this season, Larson already had a couple of victories. So he had a pretty strong season going to that point, was already set in the playoffs that NASCAR waived the fact that he missed the Coca-Cola 600. So he's in the playoffs, so it's all good. It all will depend on what happens in the first part of 2025, but I would imagine they'll still try to get it done. And Rick Hendrick said it looks really good at that moment, and that was yesterday after the end of the Brickyard 400. He said it looks really good, but never say never and say maybe it won't happen. You just don't know, but I would say all parties got a lot out of that race, that double, the attention they got, and I think Kyle Larson could certainly be a threat if he comes back and runs the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Now, Michael, around here we like to say 93.5%. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, you know what? That's perfectly fine because nobody wants 99.5% of anything.
That's right. Michael Young, the track dude, joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. Michael, when you think about, I thought, to be honest with you, and I didn't know or think that I was going to be able to see it or call it. I thought the Xfinity race and the size of those cars on that track in the oval is the perfect marriage, because I thought that was not that the Brickyard wasn't, but I thought the Xfinity race was probably the best event of the weekend.
Far and away, I think one of the best events of, well, not of the whole Cup season, because they have had some amazing races, but on a big track like that, to be able to have those restricted engines, they ran the Talladega engine package for those Xfinity cars, and it was just the perfect balance of everything. It was the right amount of power. The tires were really good. Those last 3 laps of that race were fantastic. I can't think of a time, and you think about the Brickyard 400 yesterday, I don't believe, and thinking back on the day, that there was a pass for the lead in green flag conditions. I think everything happened in stages, things of that nature, that there was never really a big moment where we had 2 or 3 big moments in the last three laps of the Pennzoil 250. That was truly a fun race to call with Riley Herbst and Cole Custer, Eric Almirola. It was a thriller all the way down to the end. And for Eric Almirola to come at the white flag, sweep to the outside and pass 2 cars to go to the lead, and then end up finishing third when they came across the yard of bricks, that was one for the ages for sure.
I believe you used the word snookered in the broadcast. Was that the first time you've used the word snookered?
I usually try to fit snookered in weekly just so I have it in my arsenal.
Okay.
It just kind of popped out. Yes, it was a great move. I really didn't think he was going to be able to get around him. I don't know if you did. I mean, you were out in turn 3, but when he got around him, I said, that was a move. That was just it was really kind of exciting. It really caught me off guard when he came into turn 2 with the lead.
Well, I was more surprised that I was taking a handoff in the broadcast that had just used the word snookered. And then,
and then you had an Indianapolis 500 reference, so I think we came full circle, full oval with the call, and we did a little bit of everything there.
That's right. Hey, Michael, track dude Michael Young is our guest. Do you find yourself envious of Jimmy and Eddie that they get to spend an entire week with me and you only get the periodic weekend?
You know what's funny is that someday I'm going to write a coffee table book. Well, there probably won't be coffee tables in another 5 years. But if I wrote a book, just spending a weekend with you and the various things that I hear, see, I witness, and these are things that I don't. There's simply daily texts that I will get, and I'm sure you've shared this with everyone, of how Jake Query can sit at a bar, order a beer, and the keg will be blown. The tap will be dry, and Jake will sit, order. So I've witnessed it with my own eyes, and I think if I chronicled every one of those, that could fill half of a book just on the chronicle of the videos that you send me. But it's so much. It's so interesting to be around you because your brain works like none other, and I don't know how you come up with the things you do, but they have to. Either they'll go insane or they'll truly appreciate the insanity that is Jake Query, because it's borderline frenetic, I think.
Here's the conclusion I've drawn, and again, somebody said that I make this show too much about me, and I'm like, well, I mean, hey, that's kind of the idea.
Can I share something before you ask? So Jake had seen a band, and so everything's in trivia form, and we were talking, and for whatever reason, I couldn't remember the band's name. And Jake simply said the initials of the band is my favorite person in life. And, of course, it was modern English, and I didn't put two and two together. But a week later, I'm like, oh, M-E, me. Yes, I get it.
No, what I was going to say is when my time comes, which, again, I mean, we're day to day, right?
Right.
I'd like to request, if it's possible, that when my obituary is written in, and I know that that's kind of morbid, but can you have a photo of me that you've sent me occasionally because it repops up on your phone or your memories or whatever, and I do think that that's the photo that needs to be accompanying the description of me when everything comes to an end.
It was in the San Francisco airport. We were finishing up at the Sonoma Raceway, and of course, Jake, it doesn't matter if we have one car or four cars. He's already about 30 minutes outside the track before we even finish the last call. So he's already at the airport. He's catching up. He goes, hey, I'm in the airport. I'll just see you at the gate. And I'm like, okay. So I'm walking through the gate, and it's odd at the San Francisco airport. It's kind of you go down a hallway, then you make a right, make a left, and there's a little foot massage place. I'm like, that's kind of an odd place for a foot massage place to be. And I look, and oh my God, Jake's getting a foot massage. So he has his slacks rolled up to about his knee, and some guy's working on his feet. He's got his head kicked back, and he's got a book laying on his chest like he's going to take a quick nap, and it's the Charles Manson biography. And I'm like, I mean, those things always go over well in California. That brings back such fond memories for all those folks out there.
Manson's huge in the Bay Area.
Oh, he's huge. Just, and people just look at that and they go, my God, what is that man thinking? I'm like, it's just Jake Query.
Hey, we'll see how long they let us keep doing this, and I'm sure that, assuming Jake allows him to, Derek Schultz would have a word in that. But I don't need any compensation, but I'd like to write a chapter in this coffee table book if you expand it to others that work with him on a daily basis.
There may be some repeat stories. I don't know how much of his material he reuses over a week, but we will certainly compare stories before it's all said and done.
I am very non-neurotic and easy to work with. That's all I'll say, right? Right?
Amen.
And very humble.
100%.
And I am, Michael, I'm very humble. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say of all the people whose egos I think should be through the roof, yours is probably through the roof.
When we fly to Long Beach together, I mean, we easily, I mean, we get to about Phoenix, and then finally I'm done talking about myself. And then it's your turn.
One of my favorite, these are the odd things about Jake. We were in was it LAX we were in, or Phoenix? I can't think it was LAX. And for whatever reason, Jake found these shrimp chips. That's
he brought up Freddie, and he didn't like them. Go ahead, Michael.
So we're standing at the gate, and of course, there's all the IndyCar folks. We're together, and we're all kind of. He goes, "Try these." I'm like, I don't want to try them. He goes, "No, just try them." So he got through all of us and started going up to total strangers. Here, try this. And this one woman was kind of uncomfortable, but then Jake started to charm her. Then her boyfriend wasn't too thrilled about it, but he's like, "No, you can have one too." And he's just everybody in the gate were getting shrimp chips.
And you know what? And here's the thing: it was 200 people going in 200 different cities that all collectively came together as one. and everybody had a great time and loved it, right?
Kumbaya, my lord. Kumbaya.
All right, Michael, we'll let you get back to stroking that mullet and listening to Journey in your basement.
Wheel in the sky, baby. It keeps on turning. Don't stop believing.
Two totally normal things for a guy to do when he's not taking pictures of a coworker getting a foot massage reading about Manson. All right, Michael, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
All right, it's the track dude, Michael Young, the Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas Line. We should have Michael on weekly just to talk about me, right? My favorite subject. Mike Chappell, top of the hour. Colts getting set, reporting on Wednesday, practice on Thursday. I love this song.
See, it was ruined for me, and I think a lot of people from my generation, because it was co-opted by Taco Bell, and anytime they bring back the beefy melt burrito, this is played.
I can see that.
So I can't disassociate. I'll stop the world of melt with you with the return of the beefy melt burrito.
The weird thing about that song is that, first off, it has one of the best. Can you re-rack the very intro of that song? Like the way that it just starts. I mean, it comes right out of the box. Play that again, Eddie. Now the weird thing about this song, and it was not a like smash #1 hit when it came out, but that song, along with "It's the End of the World as We Know It" by REM, these are the two songs that fit into this category for me of what I'm about to say. I don't know that anybody can remember the first time they heard it. You've just always known it. The very first time you hear that song, you just feel like, even if it's the very first time you've ever heard it, in your mind, it just has a sound where you think
Sure.
to yourself, I've heard this my whole life, right? And I don't remember the first time that I'd ever heard that. It just has always been in the soundtrack of my life, even though it didn't come out until I was probably 10 or whatever, however old. But we went last year I think it was in the wintertime, I went to Hi-Fi in Fountain Square and saw Modern English. And I think I told you guys this. It was kind of cool because they came out and there were not 200 people there. I mean, Hi-Fi is a very intimate venue anyway. It's a very cool place. I just saw the Bodines there as well. But it was a relatively small crowd, but they came out and the lead singer of Modern English says right off the box, look, I realize that most of you are here to hear one song. And of course they waited until the very end to do it, but once they played it, it was pretty awesome to see them play it live. And they sounded pretty close and pretty true to that sound. Which led me to my other thought of it, which was, gosh, and it takes so many things to fall into place for it to even happen. But if you truly were a band that struck gold with one song, and that song broke through, you literally could live off that for 30 years. I mean, think about, they're still getting royalties from the Taco Bell commercial for that song and how many movies it's been in. I mean, it was in Valley Girl. That probably was what really launched it into the mainstream. But can you imagine just going out? Bob Jenkins, the late, great Bob Jenkins, told me a story of later in his life, because he had appeared in Days of Thunder. He was the NASCAR commentator in Days of Thunder. And I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, he got a phone call from somebody that said, hey, this is the Hollywood Screen Actors Guild, and we have royalty checks for you, but you need to join the Screen Actors Guild to get them. And he thought it was a joke. He thought it was a prank. He said, yeah, right. And the guy said, no, I'm serious. And Bob Jenkins said, okay, I'll tell you what. If you're really serious, then give me your phone number, and I'll call you back and see if you answer the phone at your office. And the guy said, okay. So Jenkins calls, and they say, Screen Actors Guild or whatever. And he says, oh, my gosh, this is real. So they patch him through. He gets, and he told me, a sizable check in the mail for all of the back royalties that he had never claimed from any time the Days of Thunder would air on TNT or HBO or whatever. And then literally he told me, he said, yeah, once a month I go out and I'll get a check, and sometimes it's for $32 and other times it's for $300, depending on where Days of Thunder airs. And so imagine a song like that. That's good living, right?
That story would have had a different tune had he called back. They did all that and it turned out to be a Nigerian prince still at the end. Like that would, I don't know if that becomes a better story or not.
Which is what I think he thought it was, right? He's like, yeah, I don't need it.
Yeah.
He's not a Nigerian prince, but he is a writing king. Talking about the dean of those that cover the Colts, Mike Chappell, joins us next. School is in session. All of the Colts players are right now at Target. They're buying their folders, their art boxes, making sure that they have that big rubber pink eraser, fresh set of trusty number 2 pencils, because believe it or not, it is upon us. Wednesday, report day. Thursday, first day of activity at Grand Park for the Colts training camp. And
Mom, where's my
now,
protractor? Where's my protractor, Mom?
Do they still have protractors? Do we need
I
protractors?
would assume so.
The protractor is the little thing that swivels, right? What's the
No, that's the compass.
compass? Okay, the protractor is
Is the
half
semicircle thing.
semicircle plastic thing, right? That nobody ever used. Yeah. Ruler as well, right? You got to have the ruler. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, he is the dean of writers when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts from WXAN and CBS4, Mike Chappell, joining us to talk about this. Chap, you ready to go?
Ready or not. I mean, it's going to be here whether we're ready. We've waited all summer. It's just amazing how quickly things fly by. So, yeah, I mean, all the expectations, anticipations, uncertainties, it'll start unfolding really Thursday when they practice for the first time.
Realistically, what's the expectation?
AFC South.
To win the division?
It's got to be. I mean, it's been
well, is that the hope or the
2014.
expectation? Because don't you expect that Houston right now is the one in pole position there?
I guess it just depends on how you want to use the word. This team should expect to be a competitor for it, compete, and we'll find out week one. How where these two teams stack up. It's just sort of kind of nice that the NFL decided to put Houston and Indy, which is where it ended last year, on 4th and 1. So I think we'll get a good idea. And again, there's every reason for Houston to be really enthusiastic because of the way they did it with a young team, a young coach, and the quarterback, and now you've got to do it again. And I'm not discounting what they've got at all. I think they're in really good shape with young players at premium positions. But then I just remind everybody that the Colts were a 4th and 1 conversion away from maybe winning the AFC South, and then maybe some of the narrative, off-season narrative on Houston and the Colts is different. I don't know. I mean, the roster would be the same. But that's how close the Colts were to winning the AFC South, and sometimes it's easy to forget that.
The Dean, Mike Chappell of Fox 9 and CBS4, is our guest. Chap, is it refreshing, weird, exciting to know that, as we brought up earlier in the show, compared to last year or previous training camps, most of the storylines for this one are exclusively on-the-field stories?
Yes, I just saw where in Green Bay what Jordan Love's not going to practice until he gets a new contract. We were there last year with a running back. Now, it was never stated that was the reason he wasn't out there, but that certainly played into it. Yeah, I mean, it's the question to me still is about the quarterback and his shoulder, and that wouldn't have been the case had he not had an unscheduled no practice the last day of the off season. Every indication is he's fine. He'll be fine. And one thing I pointed out, and people need to keep in mind, with wearing players down in camp, and Rick Venturi and I laugh all the time about this, the Colts have exactly 0 stretches of 3 practices in 3 days. They've got like 4 back-to-backs, but the way it's scheduled, now there's days they'll practice on the field twice and have a walkthrough the next day or whatever, but there's no stretch of 3 days of straight practice, which in the past was ridiculous. I mean, they practiced twice a day in pads, back in the day. So there's no reason for Richardson to have a scheduled off day. If he does, I think there's a concern. But it's very refreshing. And then on top of that, they've got all 22 starters coming back, plus the special teams. I was going to do the research on when the last time that happened, and I'm not, because I just can't imagine there's been a time for any team where you've brought back all 22 starters plus your special teams. It just doesn't happen because somebody leaves, somebody's traded, somebody retires. So, if you like last year's team, you like this year's team. It's basically the same with hopefully Richardson out there for 17 games. Ain't Jonathan Taylor out there for more than the half season when he was really full go. So there's reasons for optimism. And again, whether it's expectations or hope, I don't know how you want to put it, but this team, if it doesn't have those expectations, then what are you doing? I just think that should be the bottom, the floor of what your expectations are. That's what they're working for, and there should be pressure on this team to finally do it. If the quarterback stays healthy and if he's what you think he is, what you hope he is, what you need him to be, the division should be the bare minimum of what you want to do.
Chap, one area that we haven't talked a lot about from last year, Mike Chappell, our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, that is different, is with Anthony Richardson as a rookie last year, and I know he was hurt and away for a bit, but how much, if at all, was Gardner Minshew a mentor for him in terms of teaching approach, maybe showing things on film, working on range of motion, all of it? And I know that Joe Flacco's a veteran as well, but let's begin with Minshew. Is that a loss for them for Anthony Richardson's sake of Minshew not being there?
I don't think so. I don't want to downplay Minshew's presence. He's the reason they were there in Week 18. He was, and I think he was the reason they fell short, because I think they got the most out of Minshew. I sort of thought last year the notion that the team spun about, well, he benefited from watching. He benefited from they're saying that because Richardson didn't play. So you have to say that not playing, he benefited from watching and learning and how to be a pro, and you see things different. I understand that. But there's no replacement for playing. I go back to Peyton Manning when he was 3-13. I mean, he suffered the growing pains, and then about midseason, the light went on. So did Richardson learn from watching Minshew? I suppose. If that's the case, he's going to learn more from Flacco. And again, I think Flacco, I don't know how it was received, but Flacco sort of said, I wasn't signed to be a mentor. If that was the case, they would have signed him to be another quarterback coach. But if a young quarterback is smart, he watches how the other guy does it. And there will be times, there'll be a lot of times in camp, we saw it during OTAs and the offseason stuff, where you see these guys talking. Maybe it's Richardson saying, okay, Joe, what did you see there? Or it's Flacco saying, hey, I saw you do this. How about this? There's always that going on. But to think that Richardson benefited from not playing, that's not the case. He would have done much better to play 15, 16 games and deal with the ups and downs. We're probably still going to have some rookie moments this year because he didn't play. He threw 84 passes, and that's never a good thing. But I think being around Flacco will be more valuable than being around Minshew. And part of that is because after the surgery, Richardson was away for a little bit while he was getting the surgery and the rehab time. So I don't want to totally dismiss Minshew's impact, not on the team, but to Richardson. I think he'll gain more from being around Flacco, from the experience. I just think those two guys are wired different, Minshew and Flacco, I think. But yeah, I still fall back to it wasn't a good thing for him not to play and to watch. That's never a good thing. It really is. Not when you said he's your quarterback and he needs to play.
If you could go back in the times that you've covered the Colts, Chap, this has nothing to do with this year's installment of the Colts, I realize, but I'm curious. If you were to go back in your time covering the Colts from a invaluable beyond statistics standpoint, and I'm talking about being a guy that was great in the film room, great in practice by going over things and getting in the ear of the guy that was the starter, who's the most valuable backup quarterback the Colts have had?
Wow, good question. It's hard to say anybody during the Manning era because Peyton sort of was his own guy. I think Sorgi was really good for what he was doing. But I mean, if you're a backup quarterback and you go to Peyton and he says, "Hey Peyton, I saw this. What do you know? Maybe you should do. What's Peyton going to do to you?"
Could Mark Rippon have done that because of the difference, the early Manning year?
Maybe, but I just think it would be really hard for anybody.
How about Hasselbeck? How about Hasselbeck for Luck?
There you go. There you go. That's a great one. That's a great one. And I think Luck benefited greatly from Hasselbeck. And I've got to tell you, I can't think of any quarterback, non-starting quarterback we've had in the locker room that we got more out of than Hasselbeck. He was just a fountain of information, of experience. And that's not normal. I really don't think we're going to spend a lot of time this year with Flacco, and that's no disrespect to Flacco, to talk to him about things like we did Hasselbeck. And I think Hasselbeck, you see that from his role as a analyst. He's just such a great communicator. And I think Luck greatly benefited from having him around. And Luck was of Manning's talent. He really was. But I don't think Luck was as I don't want to paint Peyton in too bad of a picture. I don't think Luck was so honed in that I know everything. I think Peyton got a lot more from like the Tom Moores and Clyde Christensen and Jim Caldwell than he would have from a fellow quarterback. That's just how Peyton's wired. Yeah, you hit it. And if you'd give me a chance to do some research on it, come with Hasselbeck, without question, I think, was a guy who really had an impact. And then when he had to play, he was pretty good. He did it pretty good until the team around him let him down. So, yeah, I don't know that Flacco – if Flacco can be Matt Hasselbeck to Richardson, then they've got a great thing going here.
Chap, for the last 3 or 4 chapters of Joe Flacco's career, I mean, I just did it just now. You Google Joe Flacco mentor – there's 3 different articles of young quarterbacks he's sitting behind, and his quotes have always been the same of, I'm not necessarily here to be a mentor, but that's kind of what he has transitioned into the second half of his career. That's what a lot of quarterbacks, if you don't have like the high level of success where you're ready to walk away from the game, and he's a Super Bowl champion, but you get what I mean. He's never been viewed as a top 5 or top 10 quarterback in league history, but he loves the game. He'd love to still be a part of it, but whether it's Jalen Hurts to the setup now with Anthony Richardson, he's back in this, like it or not, mentor role. At his age, other than the love of the game, why Indianapolis for Flacco? I know we've had plenty of months to digest this, but as you look into camp, what is it about this situation that would be most appealing to him?
Well, it's a short sample size, but there is a chance to play.
Sure.
Because your quarterback played four games last year, and he got hurt 2 or 3 times, depending with the knees that didn't keep him out of any action. So but I think it is a good situation, and but it's a good organization. I think they gave him a decent contract, which let's never, that's always a good thing. It's always a good thing when you're 39 years old and you're going into your whatever it is, 17th, 18th season. It's nice to get a decent contract and not sign that 1 year, $2 million contract, whatever. It's a stable situation, and I'm sure with him it was a good chance to sign early, be here, have the off season, as opposed to signing, the last week of August or September, and then everything's against you, like it was last year in Cleveland, where it worked out for him, where he stepped in and was effective right away. That's probably an aberration for a quarterback. I think it's a good situation for him. I think what's different about he and Minshew is Minshew came in here, right, whether he should have or not, to compete for the job. I mean, we talked to him on several occasions about that. And when they announced, whatever it was, the first week of August, that Richardson was the starter, surprise, surprise, we knew it was coming. He said, yeah, I'm disappointed. I wanted to come here and start and all this. That's not Flacco. He came in here knowing from day one that he was going to be the backup, and barring anything happening, he wasn't going to play much. If Richardson plays, Flacco plays when games get out of hand one way or the other. So I think there's something to knowing your role right away. not having lofty expectations, which Flacco shouldn't have when he came here. Minshew had those last year, right or wrong. So I think it's a good fit. And again, he's 39. I think it's important. It's the old Clint Eastwood line. The man's not got to know his limitations. And I think he sort of does. He understands where he fits, and he doesn't have, boy, if I have a great training camp, then I can be the starter. That's not the case. The only way he plays significant time is if Richardson gets hurt, and that's what everybody hopes doesn't happen.
Chap, Shane Steichen last year seemingly pushed all the right buttons. What areas did Shane Steichen leave on the table that he needs to improve?
Probably pushing the ball down the field, I think, which was a reflection of not having a quarterback either capable or willing to push the ball down the field. I think that will change now. And the running game, I guess, it was okay. It got better with Taylor. Keep in mind, he didn't have Taylor on the field until the second or third week of September. So he never really, and that was about the time. Well, it was. Taylor came back against Tennessee week 4, which is when Richardson got hurt. So I thought what Steichen and Cooter and all the offensive coaches, Reggie, were able to do, I think they were top 13 scoring with that group. I mean, a group that was lacking. It's hard to say what he could have done better with that group. I mentioned the deep game because I remember talking to Reggie over and over about the deep game. He said this was the end of the season. He said I'm having them do a cut up of times Pierce was open. I mean open, and we didn't get the ball to him. He said there were 10, 12 times. All the hate that is flowing to Alec Pierce. How would that have changed if he catches 4 passes that are 40, 50 yards? And then all of a sudden, how do you view him? So I've always said that the one player who has been most held back by this quarterback situation has been Alec Pierce. Now he's got the chance of showing that it wasn't me, it was situations, it was circumstances. And maybe, again, that's probably the one part of the game that Steichen wasn't able to go to that enough last year. There were occasions, but I think that was more a case of not having the quarterback, again, either capable or willing to take the shot down the field. Again, there were a few times. Go ahead.
And I don't – look, there's a lot of ifs, right? But if, for some reason, Anthony Richardson misses a game or two – and Joe Flacco's playing, and A.D. Mitchell is able to have big games and Alec Pierce is not, then at that point there's enough variable within the experiment that you can start to then say that there might be an issue. Is that a fair statement?
No question. And I do believe that camp will open with Pierce being the guy at that spot. It'll be Pittman and Downs as a slot guy, and I just really believe Pierce will be the starter, the outside starter to start with, and then you got Mitchell. The concerning thing, if you're Pierce, is they sort of drafted your replacement. I mean, they're both sort of in that same mold of being the outside guy with deep speed that you can take the top off a defense, blah blah. Well, that's what Pierce was. That's what Alec Pierce was, and you've drafted a guy who might be better at it. I don't know. He might be better, probably is better at it. So that would certainly catch my attention if I'm Pierce, that they drafted a guy who sort of does what I'm supposed to do. But no, you're right. But I do think they're going to give Pierce every chance to show that in the right situation and with the right options, he can be that guy. And I think that's going to be one of the more interesting outside of safety and corner. I think offensively, the competition between Pierce and Mitchell will be really, really intriguing.
Well, you say every chance and every opportunity, Chap, but you also mentioned the obvious elephant in the room, which is, there's no way about it. They did draft his replacement. Like, if it does not go well for Alec Pierce this year, A.D. Mitchell, in theory, would take on that role, or at the very least take snaps away from what Alec Pierce is to this offense. So in that same vein, maybe he does get every opportunity, but it's certainly a short leash, especially if A.D. Mitchell looks good in camp or good in the preseason or good at the snaps available to him, is it not?
Oh, sure. Now, we can argue what the term short leash is, but no, there will come a point when either Pierce has established himself as being that guy despite having Mitchell at his heels, or that Mitchell is simply better. And that's what every season is. That's what every position is you have to earn it. Whether it's Mo Alley Cox at tight end, what do they do with him this year? Have they run out of? I don't want to say patience because he's done quite a bit, but there comes a time when you replace guys, and the worst thing you can do is to stick with the guy too long because he's your draft pick. I don't think these guys have done that. Somebody's probably slipping my mind, but they generally, if you're better, you play. Whether you're an undrafted guy or whatever, I just don't think that it serves anybody's, other than the player, anybody's purpose to stick with the guy when you've got somebody behind him playing better. Everyone in the locker room knows or believes who should be playing, whether it's this quarterback or the backup or the left tackle or whatever. The best players will play. And camp and the joint work with the Cardinals and the Bengals, you'll see. Both players will be given every chance. I think Pierce will be given more chances because he's a starter, and you give starters more reps than you do backups. But Reggie's a smart guy too, and he'll know, and he'll tell Steichen. And these guys will not stick with a player, whether it's Pierce, whether it's anybody. We're talking about Pierce now, but if it's clear at some point, I don't know that training camp or preseason can determine that. Maybe it can. I think you're still so limited in what you can do practice-wise and contact-wise. I don't know if they can get that kind of a grip of evaluation in the next month. Maybe they can. I don't know. But at some point, they'll make a decision, and the decision will be manifest by reps on the field. It's crazy, but last year, the receiver on the field the most was Alec Pierce. It's incredible. 1,000-some reps, more than Pittman. So that showed you their trust in Pierce doing other things, blocking. He's a great blocker.
Chap, is that undercut a little bit by how weak that room was last year, though?
Well, maybe, but yeah, maybe. But the starters and Downs, they played the bulk of the snaps, and then they sprinkled in this guy and that guy. But yeah, that probably.
I mean, I'm not trying to fully undercut it. I feel like the biggest question mark we had going into last year, especially with Michael Pittman Jr. in the contract situation, was, what is this room? Is it any good? Like, who's going to step forward and be the leader of this room, or is it a wide receiver 2/wide receiver 1 in Pittman and then a bunch of guys?
Well, and it's like I say, right now you got Pittman and Downs.
Right.
I don't think
it's not a question this year. No, yeah.
But again, it's not a bad thing to have Pierce and Mitchell vying for snaps. It just isn't. They're the top 4 probably, and then Doolin's probably 5, and then we'll see Anthony Gould, whatever. He's more of a kick guy. But it's not a bad thing. We've seen times where a position looked pretty strong, and then you get an injury or two in camp, and all of a sudden, and then the narrative is, I can't believe they didn't do more to deal with the depth at the position. Well, you can only have so much. But right now, the receiver room is pretty deep. Would you like to have a Justin Jefferson? Absolutely. Or a Jamar Chase, but that's not the case. I like Pittman. Do you wish he was a little bit more? Probably. But he's still pretty good. He's still pretty good, darn good. You can argue top 12, 13, 14 receivers in the league. That's pretty good. But to have 4 guys that you feel really good about, And I think they feel really good about Pierce. I really do. I think they really feel good about Mitchell, which is a good thing. Competition will sort things out. And you've seen during the season how you need X number of players, and the way Steichen works players, if a guy can play, I keep going, if a guy can play, he will get on the field. And we'll tell by how they use rotations with that spot who in their mind is the better player. Will it take a rookie a little bit of time to get acclimated? Maybe. It really didn't with Downs. He was comfortable from the get-go. So but there's no question. And we may have this discussion in 4 weeks about Pittman and Pierce, or about Pierce and Mitchell. And that would be a good thing for Mitchell, maybe not for Pierce, because I would hope, again, I don't think camp will resolve that, but I think we'll have a pretty good idea that Pierce can be that guy that they anticipated, and Mitchell may have to kind of get worked in, or at some point early in the season, it's more Mitchell. And again, Reggie and the coaches will decide that, players will decide that, and we'll sort of kind of see how they do this. It'll be very interesting to see how that position plays out.
Chap, lastly, tell me the craziest, you've done 40 of them, or about to be 40, something like that. Tell me the craziest story that happened during a training camp that was completely, and I don't mean like a player holding out. I mean something that you're like, wait, what? That happened in, are you serious? And just was a complete curveball.
Well, the Manning thing, to begin with, because he had the surgeries, and then we had that press conference at Anderson where he signed the extension, and I hope to be a Colt for life, and he never played again for the Colts. That was pretty crazy. And then that same training camp when he's not throwing because of the neck, and Dave Calabria with Channel 13 got pictures of him throwing at some practice field, probably the baseball field at Anderson, and then they tried to get Calabria to put the kibosh on it, which I don't think Dave did. That type of thing. Other than that, gosh, when the weight tent caught fire up at Anderson, the weight tent was outside, and there was some kind of a ambulance or EMT, and the weight tent caught fire. Other than that, not really, because we're well past holdouts with Marshall Faulk and Bob Sanders. There was Peyton's rookie season when he comes out and first couple of practices he's throwing in the ball, whatever he throws. And I remember the cornerback, Carlton Gray, starting cornerback they got in a trade with, I don't know whether it was the Giants or whoever it was.
New York, yeah.
And he's everybody's gushing over Peyton, this, that, and the other. And Carlton Gray said, man, I don't see what's so big of a deal. Looks like just some guy out there throwing. Like 2 days later, he was cut because they didn't like people dissing Peyton Manning. But other than that, what you want is a very, very uneventful camp. You don't want, Carson Wentz breaking a foot, and the next day Quentin Nelson breaks a foot, and before that, Frank Reich was going to miss camp to start because of COVID. You don't want that. You want an uneventful, dull camp. And I'm hoping that us reporters, we have a very, very uneventful, boring camp. That'll be a very good thing.
Boring camp, indeed, would be a good thing. We've had plenty to talk about over the course of the years, and it's time for Karma to balance it out. Chap, we look forward to talking to you over the course of the season. Appreciate the time as always.
Stay in touch, guys.
Mike Chappell from CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. Jimmy, you've been working on plays of the day over there. You got them coming up here in about 20 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
I'm ready to go. We got baseball back in full swing after the All-Star break last week. I'm excited.
Perhaps a ticket giveaway here, Jake?
Yeah, so I heard a promo for that, Eddie. What do we got going on there?
Sounds like we're giving away a family 4-pack of tickets to the Indiana State Fair.
I love the State Fair, man.
Me too.
I love it.
Have you seen some of the items on the menu, food-wise?
Yeah, there's
Pickles is like the theme this year.
What did I see, though, was the Iowa State Fair knocked it out of the park with one of their offerings. I think these state fairs try to outdo each other, right?
Oh, definitely.
Do we have a list of some of the main items this year? So this is the year of the pickle? Last year what was the theme last year?
I can't remember.
One of them, the theme was some sort of because they had an extra grilled cheese sandwich type thing. It might have been a dairy year last year.
I was getting the potato chips on the skewer with like the cheese sauce. drizzled on there.
Okay, so if we're going to go to the state fair and we're going to let you guys do it, when we come back, I want each of you to tell me when we go to the state fair, if we were to do it together on a field trip, the first food item that you have to go get. There's one for me that I have to get every single year, every year. So you guys think about that. We'll get to that next, and we'll give tickets away for it on the other side, Eddie. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, state fair tickets to give away. We'll do it next. Okay, so we're going to load up in the Jeep. We're going to go to the state fair together. We park. We walk out along the midway, and we're like, okay. And we're kind of like the Brady Bunch when they were at Kings Island. And Mr. Brady's like, okay, let's all disperse, and we'll meet back here as long as we don't screw up the Yogi Bear poster and the Prince. So we disperse immediately to meet up at a later time. Eddie, the first place that you're going in terms of whether it be somewhere you're going to purchase something, see something, or get something to eat is what?
I'm getting a corn on the cob.
Okay. And that is, by the way, produced, if I'm not mistaken, from the Lions Club. And you're getting the buttered or not buttered?
Buttered.
Okay. Jimmy Cook.
I am headed to the Dairy Barn from the American Dairy Association.
Dairy Bar.
Bar, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm headed to the Dairy Bar for the American Dairy Association strawberry milkshake.
Okay. Fair enough.
Mine and Haley's favorite treat to be able to go get at the state fair is good milkshake
The grilled
stop.
cheese is also a must there, right?
It is delicious. Yeah.
I say it's a bar because they serve drinks.
Yeah,
That's what you're getting. I'm going to go with, and that's a really good call. Man, I'll tell you, the Swiss grilled cheese on rye or on wheat, either one. But I'm going to have to go with Eddie, although mine's unbuttered, corn on the cob. Now, do you ride the little Skyline?
We did a couple of years ago, and Haley's not afraid of heights.
It's a little
but
uneasy.
she was
It's
not
kind of
happy
weird
with
isn't
that.
it?
Yeah,
It
was
is
very
kind of weird.
uneasy. Yes, because it's not high enough to where like you can clearly see everything. Like if you were, on a roller coaster or something. So it's not high enough to where you feel invincible, but it's also not high enough to where you can't see like the people
Okay,
anymore.
now-
You feel like if you landed, it's gonna end very badly.
Now, what's the one ride? And here's my favorite thing to do, is to go and watch the one ride. It's usually called like Alpine something, and it has like serious hard rock music that plays, and there's always a Carney type guy that gets on it, and he's kind of narrating while people go through it. But it just goes around, and you sit in the car with 2 or 3 other people, and then it goes down, and it goes kind of around. It's a circle, and it goes behind the sign, and then it comes back down, but there's a slight hill to it. It's usually called, I think it's called Alpine Ski or Alpine Lodge, and it's always got like serious like death metal music playing. You know what I'm talking about, either one of you guys? But if you go and watch it, the way that it rolls around, it goes so fast that people's arms come flailing out of it, and everybody's trying to act like they're smiling and having fun, but they have a terrified look on their face. And to watch that is awesome, just to watch people's reaction. Do you know which ride I'm talking about, Eddie?
Nope.
As I have, which is
I'm sorry.
funny that I'm the one to say this now because you're the second half century of your life, gentlemen, across the way. But as I've aged, the rides of the midways are no longer in my database. I think that
Well-
All-American Roundup and Tilt-A-Whirl, the only two I can pull out for you.
I think, needless to say, I mean, it kind of
I'm not
goes,
saying you're going on them, by the way.
it goes without saying that you naturally have a hesitation of going on any of the rides because you're like, wait a minute, I just drove past here 2 days ago and these weren't up. The Ferris wheel, for example, I mean, a lot of people get terrified. Okay, Alpine Bob's is the name of the ride. Here it is right here. Let me, I mean, this is great radio that I'm showing you this, but so it does this. It goes up and then it
I
comes
know what
down.
you're talking about
Sure,
now.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I've been on that.
And it always has. And Eddie, here's the thing: like you're probably one of them that I guffaw in watching because you're trying to act like you have that kind of permagrin look on your face after your watermelon gummies, but you also at the same time it's very uncomfortable and you're trying to act like you're cool with it. But I love that. Now, what about the one where you go the ride that just goes? There's 2 cars. And it's like an oscillating thing, and
The side-by-side like pendulum type deal where they wind
Yes.
up going high. Yeah.
that's a big negative, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done that since, shout out to the St. Jude Festival back in the day on the south side. They had a ride like that at St. Jude, but that would have been back in junior high
Last year they
days.
had a huge Ferris wheel that I think was their courtesy. It was a promotion for I think IU Indianapolis or something. Matt and I wanted to go in it just because I'm like, you could probably see the whole city from the top of this. But then I get nervous when you're at the top rung of the Ferris wheel and they're stopping to let people off and it's rocking back and forth. I get very uncomfortable.
Back
with that.
to the State Fair chow for a second. I know this isn't specifically a State Fair item, and yes, you can get this at Pacers games and at the airport, but I don't always make the trek to go get it because the line is too long, but I'll do it at the State Fair. I always grab a Ben Soft pretzel because they have a station lined up near the middle of the complex itself, and I always get a soft pretzel to end the trip.
I'm down with that. It's hard to. I still think of the Hot Sam pretzels from back in the day when you get a pizza at the Glendale Hot Sam. Awesome. Eddie, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to highlight a couple of things that are on the food menu this go around for the Indiana State Fair. Dill pickle Dr. Pepper.
Really?
Dr. Pepper with dill pickles spears, followed by a splash of juice.
They've also taken the lemon shake-up and they've added the little bobas to them, which is pretty awesome.
The little what?
I thought we were taking turns here. We're both on the same website. I didn't know. If you want all the glory, go ahead. You read them off and
the
go
next
ahead.
thing I was going to say is that there is a dill pickle lemon shake-up.
I'm not about that one. I'm talking about it's a regular lemon shake-up with the little bobas, like the flavored bobas.
Yeah. Those are a big thing now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
They've taken over all of the frozen custard and yogurt places.
They have, yeah.
They also have duck fries.
Duck fries?
Yes, North American Midway Entertainment Home potatoes, fried in Indiana duck fat, finished with sea salt.
I got nothing against the ducks, man. I don't need to be frying up their fat, right?
A spicy pickle pizza.
Okay.
I don't think that needs explanation.
Gravy taters, a delicious deep-fried tater topped with our savory sausage gravy and
Now,
bacon.
my understanding is when stuff is in that the duck fat, you add the duck fat to it, it gets more expensive. You know why? Because it makes for a bigger bill. Thank you. I'll be here all week.
And then Sun King is coming out with a State Fair beer, and it is a pickle beer.
You know, a lot of that, it sounds odd to me, but then again, I never thought I'd like ketchup potato chips either.
That's right.
And I would buy the heck out of them if they came out.
Dude,
now,
do all the state
corn dog is also hard for me to pass on. I am a corn dog guy.
Do all the state fairs just logistically get together and say, hey, this is the weird theme of the fair? Because I've seen videos of other state fairs this summer.
Somebody just sent me
dill
a thing.
pickle being
I think
the
it's
taste
Wisconsin
of the
has
fair.
deep fried ranch. I mean, yeah, it's
But the pickle is taking over this year. That's where we're at.
maybe right.
There will be deep fried
I guess
golden
so, right?
Oreos this
It
go
has
around.
to be. You know what it is, Jimmy? Honestly, it's probably some of the food vendors because they're working in
Sure,
multiple
yeah,
states.
that makes sense.
Would you say, Eddie? There's gonna be what?
Deep fried golden Oreos, as well as the
Ooh,
typical deep
okay.
fried Oreo.
The
That
deep fried Oreo though doesn't taste really like much. I don't think it just tastes like an Eau Claire, right? You get kind of excited, and then you're like, it doesn't have a huge.
I go Eclair. You go Eau Claire? Is that the same thing? Is that a
I think
thing?
it is Eclair. I think you're right. I think it's Eclair.
I don't know if we had another
Now,
tomato type.
I
deal.
always
It is.
have to get, and I'm starting to. They're starting to back up on me now because the quality of them lasts longer than just 1 year. But I always have to get a little leather wallet or a little piece of leather from the leather guy. And this breaks my heart, and I still go and I ask every year, and then they look at me and they're like, "Okay, old man, but I always go up to the state police and ask for a glove compartment state map.
Hi. Do they still do those?
They haven't done them as of the last 3 years. I mean, for obvious reasons.
Sure.
Who in the world uses a state map now? But I still, there is just something about it's like the childhood nostalgic in me. I need a state map in the glove compartment.
My brother Rich writes in, and this is a timeless classic, the elephant ear. It's always a good
Elephant
one.
ear is a great one.
Yeah.
Now, some people call it fried dough. I think that's out east. Elephant ear, great one, which basically is just dough fried and then sugar cinnamon on top of it. But it's great. The elephant ear is impossible to dislike. You got plays of the day next, right, Jimmy?
I
Now,
do.
how
also
are we
have
doing the
tickets.
tickets to give away?
Yes. Yes.
How are we doing it, Eddie?
Well, we have one caller who's been patiently waiting.
What we have one person's listening to the program.
Yes.
We didn't say 239-1070 to call in if you want to go to
A
the Indiana
cinnamon
State Fair.
toast crunch funnel cake. I'd try that.
That is correct.
Cinnamon toast funnel cake is basically just an elephant ear but crunchy, right?
Yeah, but I guess they put the actual squares on there.
So if we were
a
giving
taste you can
out
see.
tickets at 239-1070 and I told people to call right now just to see if anybody's listening to this program, what would we get out of that? Anything?
I would hope the lines would start lining up like a Christmas tree.
But it's not happening. I don't think anybody's listening. Let's go to
there's one.
Let's go to line one here real quick.
Okay.
It is Chiefs fan Steve, I believe. Hi, Steve. How are you?
What's up, guys? Good afternoon.
Are you driving around right now in that gas rig where you go in and pretend that you put it in 3 different elements?
No, I am off today. Off on Monday.
Okay. You were off on Thursday when you came out to the golf outing. Did you and Brenda have a good time?
More ways than one, Jake. More ways than one.
How was it? Did you enjoy it? It was great seeing you.
We had a blast. Brenda and I had a blast. She talks about it Yeah, see, that was a lot of fun.
Well, I like that. And by the way, Steve, I don't know if you heard the big news, but since you do have Milton, who is the favorite rescue dog of the program, not named Joe or Kobe Walsh, there's another one in the mix now. We have Charlie. We got another adopted dog this weekend, just so you know.
Oh, well, congratulations.
And I know you're a fan of rescue dogs. All right, so you and Brenda would like to go to the state fair. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, we would.
So you and Jimmy can just walk around in your little Pat Mahomes jerseys
Let's
and
go.
enjoy all the corn dogs you want, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, my first stop's the like pineapple whip booth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, nice.
Okay, I got no problem there. All right, Steve, I'll tell you what. We're going to hook you up. We're going to get you and Brenda out to the state fair, partially because we love seeing you so much and having fun at the golf outing. So Eddie will get all of your information. We will get you on the way. We'll come back with Jimmy's plays of the day.
Wager is on the money line for today's plays of the day, all featured across MLB. We'll start first with the Texas Rangers, who will take to win on the money line over the Chicago White Sox as they host the White Sox down in Texas. A little bit later on this evening, we'll take the Kansas City Royals to win outright over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Last one for you, give me the Boston Red Sox to win on the road on the money line over the Colorado Rockies. Eddie, any plays from you?
Are the Reds losing today, Jimmy?
Are the Reds losing right now? I've not.
No, they're
Oh,
not
are
playing
they
right
losing?
now.
Are they
losing today?
You need this for superstitious purposes?
No, I'm just asking you.
No, I think the Reds beat the Braves today.
Okay. They just got swept by the Nationals. That's why I was asking.
Rebound against the Braves. Why not?
The Reds have basically said it's all for sale, right?
Yep.
What does that mean? Like everything, literally everything, or like there's clear still no touch?
Mascot, for example, if Mr. Met wants to come and get another one of the big head things, that's also for sale.
My guess is all the guys that are on expiring contracts. So you're looking at Frankie Montas, Nick Martinez, maybe a couple guys in the bullpen that'll be made available. But with them being young in their primary positions of Ellie, De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, who's missed the entire year, Jonathan India has been fabulous the last 2 months. Be fascinating to see if they want to move him or not.
You know, I can't say much considering the fact that their rotation is still better than what the Yankees have done the last 3 months. But that Montas signing went about as well as I thought it would.
He's had his moments. I will say that he didn't look good last outing. But it's been up and down pretty much. The top 3 starters for the Reds have been phenomenal all year long. They just haven't had consistent offense.
You know, I've kind of become a White Sox fan in the last couple of weeks. Did I tell you guys that? That's my latest phase.
Well, they're easy to root for because you have low expectations.
And because
day.
you're by yourself and rooting for them. You don't have any competition for that lane.
I kind of like listening to it on the radio. I like baseball on the radio. I think baseball is still married to radio more than
I would agree with
most
that
sports.
Wholeheartedly. I love a good baseball
There's
game
just
on the
something
radio.
about and here's the other thing. You can't cheat and get it off of like an app. It's got to be over the air, like AM radio. It's just the way it goes.
Well, I
like
still,
700 WLW.
Yeah, that's a good one. J&V, by the way, has walked in. He is wearing, either one of you guys know the significance. He's wearing the Boston T-shirt from the Boston album cover. Either one of you guys know the significance of the artwork of the album cover in terms of its double meaning.
I got nothing.
John, face him so they can see it there. Do you know this, John? Do you know the answer?
It's a guitar, right?
It is correct. It's an upside-down guitar. It looks like a
Yes.
spaceship, but it's an upside-down guitar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Upside down guitar.
Jimmy literally just
What are they?
turned his head upside down.
Well, it's not.
to
It's not.
observe
It goes back. It goes all the way to the back. It's a nice
Jimmy's here to
optical
tell us
illusion.
what he ordered from Taco Bell 15 years ago.
What a
Something
private
for-
And why modern English is ruined for
What
him.
a fried bit of beef and crunch burrito.
Well, John, I appreciate that you were listening to the show earlier.
I
We
was
were
on
talking about that.
I was on the road a little bit earlier. I heard them. I've seen Modern English. I saw them at an 80s fest that had Paul Young, Katrina and the Waves, Modern English, Men Without Hats, and Howard Jones.
That would be awesome.
I went backstage. Our guy Steve Shunk got me backstage with Howard Jones. Howard Jones loves him. Loves him.
Howard Jones is, I always thought he was British. He is American, though, isn't he?
No, he's
He is
from
British?
England. Yeah, he's
Okay.
from England. Great guy, Howard Jones.
He's got some good songs.
Yep, get a good catalog. So I went to that, and Modern English. The lead singer of Modern English, the same dude, but he's tatted up like crazy now.
He's and he's much older.
Yes, and then
Yes.
same
As we
time,
all are.
the Aerosmith guys not Aerosmith, the Air Supply guys all tatted up too now.
No way.
Yeah, there's like 2 of them. I think the main one. No, Here I Am, the one that you love, is all tatted up like crazy.
Really?
Yes,
Goes from making love out of nothing at all to making
I know it.
making
Paying some
designs out of a
tattoo
bunch of
artist. He
ink.
probably paid that dude about $15,000 with all the artwork that he has on him.
Anything big happen for you over the weekend, John?
We had a good time Saturday. That was fun as usual. I was kind of in and out of the race yesterday, like both of them, right? And then the Reds suck. Eddie knows that all too well.
It's all for sale. Reds.
They can just kiss it. Seriously, they can
it's
just
over.
go away
Clean
for
house.
a while. Go away for a while for the Reds and Team USA. I guess everybody liked the WNBA beating Team USA on Saturday.
I think they like seeing the camaraderie of Clark and Reese playing together, and
Yeah,
was cool.
So that was an interesting part, and I guess the Pacers Summer League team was terrible too. I don't know if we learned a damn thing. Not that we're going to learn a great deal, but a damn thing about Jarris Walker, have we?
I know.
Other than this, just get your butt down on defense, play some defense, and give them something that's necessary.
I
They
still
have
don't
enough
know,
scoring,
John.
a ton of scoring. Get your butt down, play a little bit of defense, and he didn't do a lot of that when he was in Vegas.
I still don't know if they know what he is, but they have to. I mean, and understand that they're going to say for value's sake that there's still something there, but and for confidence sake and everything else.
I would agree with that. I don't know what I thought Furphy gave you more of, well, this is what this guy can add to the team of the future
right,
than
in
Walker
terms of
did.
a glimpse of who he is, right?
Yeah.
That's
So,
right.
And again, I think I maintain that this sounds so easy, but it's not. But they need somebody. they need guys that play defense, and he's a guy that athletically should be able to play some defense. I think that's the way that you find yourself on the floor, but, you look out in Vegas and guys that he should dominate, and he really did. And I did watch the TBT. Man, I'm glad we had some basketball last night. That was fun, but that was the worst game of all time.
I mean,
the men of Mackey and the IU team.
I watched the first probably 15 or 20 minutes of it, and I know that, Jimmy, you said it was different when you were at Hinkle.
It's totally different on Friday.
To me, the energy level was just so flat.
When you watch an NBA game, right now, I know these aren't NBA guys, but you watch an NBA game and you're surprised when it doesn't go in. Like in that game last night, you were surprised when it did go in.
Right,
You went, oh, my God, man, he hit that, really?
Everything that happened yesterday, from the overall scoring output to the lackadaisical offense, it was different on Friday. I'm not saying everything was going in, but the atmosphere, everything was way better on Friday.
I will give you this, though. IU fans show out, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you put anything IU basketball to it, you're going to get a bunch of people to show up and watch it.
Don't you remember back in the day, John, when, I remember Leary and Pat Graham and Bailey doing a Barnstorm tour and playing
people
in Fort Wayne.
Pack high school gymnasiums and stuff to watch that. But, yeah, the basketball was pretty funny. What do you expect, right, though? They've been together for 4 days. I mean, hell, I think Miller Kopp got in there. And I think people forget now how they used to just rip on Miller Kopp his senior year about how he didn't hit shots. And, now.
Well, half the team, too. It's like, wait a minute, who's this guy? Where'd he play?
Yeah.
But
yeah, they wouldn't win without those guys that didn't play it.
You're right. You're right. All right, John's up next. He'll carry you home until 6. We will be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.